Badlands. Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
Mr. Vice President, I'm going off script again, I know, but I just want to personally thank you. We've been through some stuff. We've gone through some of the most complex military operations this country's ever conducted, and your steady hand and your leadership during those was a great source of strength for me. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your character. Thank you for your selfless service. Thank you for commitment. Thank you for being a mentor to me, Mr. Vice President.
It's called the swamp. And you know what happened? And you know what I did? A big favor. I caught the swamp. I caught them all. Let's see what happens. Nobody else could have done that but me. I caught all of this corruption that was going on, and nobody else could have done it. Did I get that one right? Every 4 years, we gather on these steps to carry out the orderly and peaceful transfer of power. Today's ceremony, however, has very special meaning, because today we are not merely transferring power from one administration to another, but we are transferring power from Washington, D.C., and giving it back to you, the people. For too long, a small group in our nation's capital has reaped the rewards of government, while the people have borne the cost. Washington flourished, but the people did not share in its wealth. This American carnage stops right here and stops right now. The forgotten men and women of our country will be forgotten no longer. From this day forward, a new vision will govern our land. From this day forward, it's going to be only America first.
This is a president of the United States who is a danger to the republic.
America first.
He knows he's an illegitimate president.
The oath of office I take today is an oath of allegiance to all Americans.
The great Trump recovery.
America will never be a socialist country. I will fight for you with every breath in my body.
Russia, Russian, pro-Russian, Russian, the Russians.
Russia.
And I will never, ever let you down.
A dangerous virus is spreading rapidly in China, and U.S. officials are very worried that it could come here.
This is really the worst attack we've ever had. This is worse than Pearl Harbor. This is worse than the World Trade Center. There's never been an attack like this.
The time for empty talk is over. Now arrives the hour of action. What they're doing is using COVID to steal an election. Together, we will make America strong again. You know what it's about? Fraud, fake ballots. We will make America wealthy again. They are trying to steal the election.
Now, under the leadership of President Trump, we are fully realizing President Kennedy's prescient view of Special Operations Forces.
We will make America proud again. And watch, please, those mail-in ballots. We will make America safe again. And in millions and millions of ballots, their vote is under what they thought they needed. They're dumping more ballots in there, okay? And yes, together, we will make America great again. Thank you. God bless you. If we are right about the fraud, Joe Biden can't be president.
Congress, the chair declares the joint session dissolved.
Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Wednesday edition of the Devolution Power Hour. And as you can see, we all lucked out, and Burning Bright is still out of electricity, and he won't be joining us tonight. Get a nice little breather from him for once, but keep him in your prayers. Those Northeasterners are a little soft-skinned, you might say, and they're struggling with the snow they got. It's kind of silly, but it is what it is. He won't be joining us tonight. Heard he's taking the whole week off, slacking a little bit. But to make up for it, and to more than make up for it, almost, I would say, I have a special guest joining tonight's show. That special guest is Alpha Warrior. And I think I'm going to get to our sponsors real quick, or at least our first sponsor, and then I'll bring Alpha on. But I'm very excited about tonight's show. I don't think me and Alpha have done a one-on-one conversation in a long time, like since the last time I interviewed on his show, his channel. So it's going to be a fun one. We have a couple different topics. We didn't do a whole lot of planning. We may even end up taking calls from you guys. We'll see what happens. But we'll definitely be looking for your guys' feedback in the chat. So I'll keep an eye over there. And on YouTube. We did finally get monetized on YouTube, which is kind of cool. So feel free to give us a bunch of super chats. So then when we do get kicked off, YouTube keeps it. And it's really cool. Anyway, real quick, sponsor. And then I'm going to bring Alpha right on. I know he just got off a show, so we'll see what we can do for you. First up tonight, we got Patriot Protect. There we go. Today, it's scarily easy for criminals, scammers, or anyone with bad intentions to find your personal information online. Your home address, phone number, workplace, even your family members' names are exposed with just a few clicks. When this much information is public, scams are not random. Hundreds of people search sites and data brokers compile profiles linking your name, address, phone number, relatives, and online behavior. And scammers use these profiles to decide who to target and how to approach them. That's how identity fraud starts, long before the damage actually shows up. Patriot Protect removes your personal data from the internet, wiping it from Google and every major website where bad actors search for targets. Patriot Protect finds and deletes your personal information from 240 plus people search engines and data brokers. Once your profiles are eliminated, their search and destroy protocol runs continuous monitoring, so every new exposure is detected and wiped immediately. It's the peace of mind of having your own security team, all for about the cost of keeping your porch lights on. If you want to take control of your personal information and reduce your exposure, go to patriot-protect.com/DPH. Use code Badlands for 15% off all Patriot Protect plans. That's patriot-protect.com/DPH, promo code Badlands for 15% off. All right, we'll get to our next sponsor a little bit later. Without further ado, let's bring on the guest of tonight's show. We got Alpha Warrior. What's up, man?
Wow.
Yeah. Have you ever...
This is what DPH looks like. This is awesome.
Welcome, sir.
No, thanks for having me. And it has been a long time since we've had a conversation.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. You know, I've been getting a lot of hate the last couple months to a year or more from the Q community, and you're one of the guys. Your approach to it, I respect, and I feel like I can actually talk to you without you getting offended. And so maybe we can get into that a little bit. But we'll see. I know you had a couple of ideas and topics that you wanted to get into, but what's going on? Tell everybody what's happening in your life, man.
You know, well, life is good because I don't have a tyrannical government with its boot on my neck. You know, it's been
kind of. You kind of do.
This could be a good conversation. It's been 13 months without Biden's tyrannical government with its boot on my neck. But no, man, it's, you know, the growth, the networking, the friendships, you know, seeing other people grow and, you know, kind of seeing a lot of the stuff that not only that we anticipated, but a lot of stuff that we predicted, you know, happen with a lot of accuracy. You know, one of the things that I think is really important, especially in the work that we do, is the confidence in ourselves, the confidence in the information that we put out there. And, you know, if you want to build confidence, you got to have consistency of accuracy. And I think, you know, a lot of us individually and definitely as a team at Badlands, we've done that. And so,
I agree.
So life has been really good, man.
I agree. And, you know, it's been tough too, because some of the stuff we've been right about has not always been pleasant. At least, I don't know, I feel that way. But yeah, we'll get into some of this tonight. You know, the blackpilling, the cheerleading, some of the Q stuff. And then again, whatever the audience wants to talk about. I know they were excited for you to be coming on. So Yeah, but why don't you open it up? You had an idea for a topic, and I caught the very end of your show with Colonel Towner. So you may have already discussed this a little bit, but you kind of wanted to get into a conversation about the Matrix and are we actually awake, or did it just get rebranded? And I kind of want you to preface your idea for that conversation so we can get into it.
I do. First, I want to just want to remind everybody, back to the basics. This is something we did in the military. This is something we did in law enforcement. We want to have the elite conversations. We want to get into, deep into the weeds of things. But, one of the things that made us great riflemen as Marines was the fact that we'd go back to the basics. We'd go sit in the grass with a barrel, 20, 30 feet away from us, and we would just snap in. Breathing techniques, sight alignment, sight picture, all these things. And I think when we look at the information war, the word war is in there. And so one of the things that we have to understand is just because it may not always be kinetic, the battlefield and the formulas are still practically the same. And so we also have to make sure we revisit the basics. And just, I want people to remember, what PSYOPs are. And so I'm going to read the definition or the purpose of it, not the definition, but the purpose of it here to remind everybody. To change the behavior of foreign governments, organizations, groups, and individuals in a manner that's favorable to the person doing their SOPs objectives. And so I think we all got to remember that. And then you said something right now, the black pilling. And words matter. In an information war, words matter. And I want people to remember there's a difference between black pilling and dooming out and educating. If you're going to get educated on something, it's not always going to be pleasant. When they would come to us and tell us, hey, your expected casualty numbers is this. Like, you want to talk about black pilling, let them tell you 22% of the people that are going into this mission aren't coming back. You start looking at everybody trying to figure out who's going to be that 22%. But at the same time, these were the things that, how do we adjust to that to make that number as minimal as possible? So when I had presented to Jon earlier today,
but before you even get into that, can I share something too about your definition of PSYOPs? Because I think that fits in really well with something I wrote about in the Devolution series in my part 22, when I was talking about irregular warfare. And Trump, about in October of 2020, so about a month before the election, he came out, and his administration, the Department of Defense at the time, published an irregular warfare annex in addition to the National Defense Strategy. And it gave a definition of irregular warfare there too. And I think this is a good context to have. And it fits with what you just talked about. Regular warfare is a struggle among state and non-state actors to influence populations and affect legitimacy. Regular warfare favors indirect and asymmetric approaches, though it may employ the full range of military and other capabilities in order to erode an adversary's power, influence, and will. It includes the specific missions of unconventional warfare. But the affecting legitimacy is a big one, because I see a lot of those type of tactics used against Trump often from people who wear the shield and the cover of MAGA, like the difference between blackpilling and dooming out and legitimately asking questions and seeking the truth. That's where I see the divide, because there are people who do pursue honesty and truth and realistic information. And then there's people who only seek to use or twist the information to doom or blackpill people, get them to doom out. And a good example of this is that whole glyphosate conversation that we just had this last week, where everybody completely misrepresented what that immunity in the executive order did. And they did so in a way to make Trump look bad, like he is attempting to give immunity or product liability immunity to cancer-causing companies, which is not at all what he was doing. But they misrepresented information so that people get upset with Trump. They're affecting his legitimacy by doing that. So I think that's a good thing to keep in mind as we continue. But anyway, go for it.
To the glyphosate, because that's important, because that's an example of a real-time operation. Coming off the heels of the conversation we just had with the colonel, we were talking about the Mockingbird media, and we're talking about PSYOPs past and present. And granted, we went all the way back to things like with the church committee and what that addressed, and a lot of things that are happening now. But to understand the glyphosate thing is, we got to rewind the clock back probably about 2.5 years, maybe a little longer, maybe a little shorter, but right around that window. It was right around, I won't say anybody's name, but people will figure this out. There was a guy out there that not a lot of people like. And he says, the U.S. Marshals and an intelligence officer and the sheriff came to my house to recruit me. And they put this this clipboard on the table. On the opposite side of this clipboard, I saw these names of all these other people that they were going to approach. Y'all kind of probably remember who that may be. If
I don't. Can you tell me? What does it rhyme with?
Someone who's made videos about you too, I believe.
There's been a lot of people who've done that.
Phil, who is he?
Oh.
Something like that.
Phil Gadushki. Yeah.
There you go. I don't like to say other names on people's shows. You know what I mean? Just out of respect. But if you're good with but he came out and he put out that clipboard. And as soon as he did that, I said, son of a bitch, I know what's going to happen here. Now, it took a little longer than I anticipated.
Did you just say some of a bitch?
Some of a bitch.
Some of a bitch?
Yeah, some of a bitch.
Okay, just continue. Sorry.
You got to make the work hard for the people that do closed captioning. Like, you can't give it to them easy. Or the subtitles crew, right? They're just like, damn it, man.
It's like Valentine's too. It's just, you're a gem alpha. Keep going.
It is. So, but he put out this clipboard with these names. And so I reached out to some people at that time and I said, hey, you're much larger voices than I am. You need to start preparing the community. You're going to see a divide that's going to happen. It's not going to be organic. It's going to be something that these operatives are going to push out to make it look like the community's collapsing. And like I said, at the time, I thought it was going to happen within the year. But what we actually saw is this started happening about, right after Trump's inauguration is where we really started to see this. And we've seen these fold. So when we talk about there's a divide in MAGA, that's inevitable. There was no way that was never going to not happen because the movement got infiltrated. And so what happens is, why is it inevitable? Well, if MAGA already kind of has their ideologies and the way we think, and you're going to have people within that community that a lot of people think are from there. Well, they wore a MAGA hat, they wore a MAGA shirt. Maybe they even interviewed Trump, and all of a sudden they're going to flip and go the opposite direction. Well, you would be like, yeah, the movement's divided. But you got to remember, that's the whole purpose they infiltrated. And it was always going to happen in tiers. Because these people, especially some of these people that have 1 million followers, 2 million followers, 3 million followers, they don't have to affect their entire following. If they can affect just 25%, and you do that across a couple dozen or 100 podcasters, influencers, content creators, that can damage the movement because it's like the mindset of J6. You get enough people that are doing it synthetically and enough people believe it, well, then it looks like it's grassroots all of a sudden because real people do start to be affected by it.
Yeah.
And I think the glyphosate, I think it was operatives that went to, go and rug pull Trump. And then unfortunately, and people don't like being called this, but this is how they act. You had useful idiots that just jumped on it. And then all of a sudden, we're dealing with this, which is why I asked about, did we really awaken from the Matrix, or did the Matrix just rebrand itself? And I don't think people want to reevaluate themselves. I mean, that my honest thing, John, is I think people like thinking that they're awake. They like thinking that they know what's going on because that's that security blanket that was taken from them when they did take the first red pill.
Yeah, man, this is such a good topic because when Trump got in there, everybody was so excited. Like, I was excited too. We were all excited. Like, yeah, Trump's coming back. We didn't know what road it would take. A lot of us expected, I think, them to steal it from him again. And that honestly would have been my best case scenario in terms of exposing election fraud, for them to have stolen it. But it didn't happen that way. And he gets in there, and then it's like so many people reverted back to, like you said, their security blanket. The critical thinking got turned off. Everything was cheerleading. And this is one of the things at the very beginning of Trump's administration, the first few months, I think a lot of people got kind of turned off to some of our approach to the info war because we didn't change how we talked about anything. We didn't change our pursuit for information, the truth and whatnot. But sometimes the truth is less exciting and less confirming of your biases. And people don't like that. And so that revert back and everything just being, okay, it's all good now. Everything's great. Yeah, that kind of sucks, but it's, just a timing thing. We just have to give them more time. And all these excuses started flying. And people didn't like hearing that. And I think we did kind of forget a lot of the info war ability that we gained during the Biden administration. Because those years were like tough. It tested us. We got really tuned in. And then we forgot how to do it as soon as Trump came in. And I think some of those things are coming back now to bite us in the butt a little bit. And we're starting to remember. I've seen it turning. I don't know what it was, but the last couple months, it seems like we're starting to get back to how things were during the Biden years, at least our approach to the info war. But as a whole, it did feel like we took a step backwards to a degree when Trump got in there, which was the weirdest thing to see, because that was like our moment to like, hey, now we can go full steam ahead. Instead, it's like we were being held back by people within the movement ourselves because we forgot how to info war.
You know, you want me to light up the chat already? Because
yes, do it, please. Do it. Do it.
So here's proof of what you're saying right now, folks. This is gonna piss some of you off. Stick around for another 20 minutes. I promise I'll make you feel better. You got to trust me on this one.
But then if you stick around for like a minute after those 20 minutes, I'll make you feel worse again. So
it's good. It's gonna be a roller coaster tonight, folks. You've been warned. Here's a statement, and I already saw it in the different chats already, and that's why I know it's gonna light some people up. Just trust me on this one, folks. If you talk bad about Trump, I'm out. It's one of the most dangerous mindsets that we can have. And why is that a dangerous mindset? Because if that's our mindset, and the left or the opposing force says, you guys are a cult, and we say, we're not a cult, but if we talk bad about them, we're out. Well, then we're a cult. Like we're giving them the ammunition for that. And so there's a strategic way of addressing things that the president does that we don't like. And we can abandon that. If we go and we rewind it back to, the COVID days, he'd go to the rallies, he'd bring up the jab, and then he'd get a couple boos. But when the boos became the majority of the people to where you heard it on RSBN or these different feeds, guess what happened? He stopped talking about it at the rallies. Mm-hmm. So you have to think, was he just trying to get us pissed off enough so that we could actually break the mold and say, hey, I love you, Trump, I'm voting for you, but I don't like this, and I'm going to do what I feel. I'm going to say how I feel. I'm going to be honest. I mean, that's a pretty important word right there. If Trump's doing something,
I think so,
and we don't like it, and we don't say something, then we're not being honest. And how can we be a truth movement if we can't even deal with that situation in of itself?
Yeah, we've been harping on this, and I know some people get sick of us even talking about it, but the bullshit we've gone through here at Badlands by people who call themselves truthers, who are the ones like lying about us and smearing our name and trying to ruin our company. It's been a difficult year because of seeing stuff like that, and then people ignoring. I was almost going to write an article about this not long ago about the effects of confirmation bias. Like it's so easy when people are searching for answers. And I know this from like when I wrote the Devolution series, right? Like I was desperate for answers, trying to figure out what was going on. And when I came across Thomas Wichter's, commentary on devolution, it like blew my mind. And I just went balls deep into it. And like, this is where I am. But I understand that like need to figure out what's happening. And once you find something, how you can attach yourself to that. And it's really hard. If your approach is incorrect, it's really hard to it's really easy to ignore bad information because you don't want it to go against your confirmation bias. Like that's why my approach to the devolution stuff from the beginning was, I'm going to go into this not trying to like only pick information that proves it right, but I'm going to try to disprove it. And because I think that's the best way to, make your foundation, your informational foundation solid, is by trying to disprove the thing that you believe. And that's my approach. But there's all these other things in the info war. And some of it has to do with the Q stuff. And I know people get really offended and touchy when you talk about the Q drops. So I'm sorry, but I'm not skeptical of Q. I'm skeptical of some decoders, and we can get into that maybe a little bit later. But when some of the stuff we talk about the truthers and some of these decoders that are out there and how they're like just clearly blatantly lying and just doing it for money, clicks, or whatever. But if you say that, people get upset and they ignore it, because as easy as it is to like attach yourself to something, it is so difficult. Like you almost use bullshit information to defend it. It's the weirdest thing. It's something to do with psychology. Like I don't know what it is, but everybody does it. Everybody, to a certain extent. It's just what degree it is, and that's something I think that is weaponized against us a lot, and that's where the infiltrators can really get in and do damage too. So I don't know, man.
Well, this is why, and I understand people see the president attacked daily. I mean, physical attacks on his life have been made. So why is it important that we're honest and call him out? And this is one of the main reasons. You're going to make my job easier. You're going to make the good intelligence agents' job easier. If you subscribe to the idea that there is a white hat coalition, you're going to make their jobs easier. And let me explain how. When I was talking about that infiltration earlier, these were people that were just going along with the movement, right? One of the things, and this, Colonel had asked a question, how do you pick up some of this stuff? Like, how do you recognize these patterns and call it so early? When I say it's okay to criticize the president, there's also a group of people that use that as a camouflage to subvert the president and subvert our government and subvert this country. And you've all heard this phrase. I promise you guys have heard it. I'm just asking questions. Now, if you're going to come out and you're going to cosplay as a Trump supporter or a MAGA person or a Q person, and you're saying, I'm just asking questions, I support the president, one of the first things I do when I come across an account like this on social media is I go into their history. I start going through all their posts for the last 2 to 3 years. And I say, let's see how many times this person has amplified something good that Trump has done or this administration's done. And if I don't see any content, then what I'm saying is, okay, you're not asking questions as a Trump supporter because every time he's done something good, you've never highlighted it. What you're doing is you're operating under the camouflage of I'm just asking questions. That's like our movement's, anti-Semitic word, right? I'm going to hide under this word so I can push this agenda. Well, if good people, and the thing about it is when these people, and a lot of them are large accounts or they're accounts that people listen to, they have influence. When they do this, well, people will follow along with them because it's a big impact. Oh my God, Trump did this. And look at this person got, bigly pissed. But if we were all honest and called out Trump on things we didn't like when it happened, that would just be a normal routine thing. Be like, oh, Trump did something. Part of the base is pissed off with it. People wouldn't see it as a divide. People wouldn't see it as the movement collapsing. People would be like, hey, this is something that the president has to recognize in his base that they don't agree with. And these people wouldn't have the impact. And then the more that we did that, then when people like myself go to do and search histories, I'd be like, oh no, this person really is concerned. They're just asking questions because they've amplified it. But if you keep yourself from doing it, all of a sudden you made yourself look like an operative. And now you're actually hiding the operatives because they're blending in the ranks.
Totally agree, man. Have I ever shown you my my truth community spectrum?
No, you haven't.
Yeah. Oh, let me show you this. Let me just get it pulled up because I think this kind of outlines what you're talking about here, and I see the truth community as really two sides of this. It's the cheerleaders. All they do, everything's good, everything's great. That's not being honest because not everything is. And this is the thing about Trump too. If you believe he's conducting his own version of psyops, which I totally believe he is and has been for the whole time, like he's been conducting. You could say truth psyops, but I don't think he always tells the truth. I really don't. And some of the reasons he does those psyops that we may not like, with lies or whatever, is because he wants people to respond a certain way. And Chris Paul says it perfectly. He's the lightning rod, and he will take both sides of the same issue, play good cop, bad cop with it. And then that way he almost removes himself from the equation. And he gets the people, like the cheerleaders will take the one side, the doomers will take the other side, and then it'll sort itself out in the middle. And this is what we see in the truth community. The black pillars on one side, the cheerleaders on the other. Everything's all bad for the doomers. And that's like an operative type of situation. The cheerleaders, I don't know if I would necessarily say many of them are actual operators, but the way they do things, they do it as if they're black pillars just on the other side. When the goal is to pursue truth at all times. And then you really can't go wrong. And the truth is, and this, I get shit for this all the time. Everybody says on my show, I'm salty and like a doomer and everything. And I'm really not. I'm a happy guy. I just see, I see a path down the middle here, and not everything's going to be good. Not everything's going to be easy. That is life. That is realistic. And so many people are not living in reality these days. But yeah, this spectrum, man, I feel like this kind of fits with what you're talking about.
It does. And you got to send me a copy of that so I can post it. Something to consider is, I lost my thought how I wanted to say it because I was thinking about that graphic. But, with the Q community, and you had mentioned it, And people get upset when when you highlight that there's people grifting in the community. Why would people get upset? If the Q community is something that we know is effective, are we really supposed to believe that the intelligence apparatus is not going to infiltrate it?
Oh, totally.
It absolutely is. And this goes to, a lot of people shit on the phrase trust the plan. And one of the things that I've adopted, and it's been very successful for me in social media, is when people come in, they're like, oh, you're a trust the plan, bro. I say, what's the plan? Well, you're a trust the plan, bro. I say, okay, well, tell me what it is. I want to understand what part of it you think's retarded. And they can't. So I'm like, so what you're doing is you're shitting on something, and it could be a retarded plan, or it could be a genius plan, but you don't even know what it is. So just because someone else said it, you're just jumping on the bandwagon. Now, what I also tell my audience, and this makes some people upset too, is when people are out there and they're saying, yeah, trust the plan. Ask, the promoters, ask them, what's the plan? Because if they're telling you to trust the plan and to put your faith in it, but they can't articulate it to you, well, then they don't know what it is either. Yeah. So you have this faction that's attacking it and this faction that's promoting it. And they're both, they're not good for the community.
Yeah.
People have to understand this. So when Trump, and this goes all the way back to 2016, when Trump started campaigning, and this is part of that, that the plan. I broke it into 17 phases just because, CAC, right? But
why not?
Why not, right? But when you go back to when he started campaigning, this is when we know that the operation became public, right? Because now he's campaigning. A lot of people, and myself included, think this has probably been in the works for a very long time, but this is when it went public. And what's one of the first things that he came out and he started doing about the news? Fake news, fake news, fake news, fake news. And why was this important? Because if media was the instrument, if it was the authority of information, that's where we all went, whether it was NBC, MSNBC, Fox, CNN, if they were the authority of information, this is why they've always controlled everything. This is, they control everything we believe because that was our reality. Yeah. So he comes out and he starts to attack them, fake news. And what did he do there? He did two things. He disrupted their authority and he delegitimized them. And that's important. Now, here's the catch, though. If you're going to do that, that means you're inevitably going to create a vacuum of power in that area now. And if you don't fill that in with something, well, then the bad guys will plug whatever their mission is into it. And so we saw 2017, this board starts to spawn. And what was the purpose of this board? It was decentralizing information.
For sure.
Because the most powerful thing, the thing that you can't defeat is decentralization. If our movement was isolated just to a few podcasters and the president, then all you would have to do is attack those people. And if you can delegitimize those people, the message fails. But if you decentralize information, what can you do? You're done. You're cooked. And so when they saw that, what did they do? Well, then they moved to censorship. They're like, oh, damn, we're in trouble. Now we got to censor these people. And we saw that got very bad for us.
Yeah.
And so then, good guy, bad guy, whatever you guys consider, Elon comes in and says, well, I'm going to go and I'm going to buy Twitter. And so this was a significant thing. And I'll bring it to the matrix. I wanted to kind of set people up where I'm thinking on this, John, is when he did that, well, the deep state said, okay, we're about to lose the ability to censor these people, which is how we've been able to control the information since Trump is decentralizing it. So what did they have to do? And this is why people have to be honest now. Like the biggest takeaway tonight, folks, spoiler alert for me, is be honest. If you be honest, we win. Is they flooded the zone with operatives. I have people that have come forward and have already admitted to me, John, these were people that were on a different platform and they were offered money to specifically come over to Twitter to push agendas, whether it was the jab or geopolitics. The crypto one was kind of obvious, but these people.
When was this?
This was a whole window. This was like during Trump's first administration and through Biden's administration. Like this,
wow.
this was, this was it heightened when Elon said he was going to buy Twitter. That's when they accelerated it. And so when he does that, all of a sudden we start to see all these people that come from a different platform and they start to show up on X. And they start to go into these virtual town halls. And I've talked about that at length, but the point that I'm trying to make is you flooded the zone with people that were operatives. And everybody thinks CIA, and CIA absolutely is involved, but you got to remember, anybody that has a dollar or a bone in the fight did it. Countries that are adversaries, intelligence agencies that don't like us, NGOs, big pharma, military industrial complex, like everybody sent their operatives to social media. Because if we can't stop the truth from coming out, then we got to put so much information in there. Finding the truth is like a needle in the haystack.
Yeah.
And the only one thing that we have that pushes back against that is if we're honest. And so when I personally think that when Trump says things and does things, and your reaction to that is like, damn, boss, that's stupid. That's the reaction he wants. Like, be honest. Because then if we're honest, we completely deflate the opposing teams, the operatives, to take control of the agenda.
Yeah. They're trying to, get control of the emotional reaction of people. So many people are looking to just be told what to think. But what you said there kind of made me think here. You said when Elon bought Twitter, people panicked and, we're finally going to be uncensored. But do you think we're really uncensored? Because it doesn't feel like it to me, man. The X algorithm, Rumble is like the one place we have, but everywhere else we're censored.
Well, here's the part.
and there's a part 2 to this. I mean, I'll answer that first, and then I'll give you part 2.
So there's still censorship. And I'll be very honest and transparent, since that's what this conversation is. It ain't just the bad guys doing censorship.
Well, what makes the good guys any better if they're doing the same thing?
Well, this is the part where unrestricted warfare.
Yeah.
That's, and we've kind of touched on this a little bit privately, but the enemy is operating in unrestricted warfare. Like if you think in the obvious, the cartels, like they will kill your kids in front of you and not think anything of it. Like that's the level of evil that we're battling with. And this globalist new world order, whatever you want to call them, that's where they operate, unrestricted warfare. I think a lot of us as Americans, we've never lived in third world nations. We've never had to expend extended amounts of time in places where if you have a Bible or you have this, like you're going to be killed, tortured, or worse. Like Americans don't know what that kind of lifestyle is. And because we don't know that lifestyle, we kind of have this moral superiority complex. We're Christians, we're Catholics, we're, whatever it is. Like this is the way we operate. The Geneva Convention, the rules of war, rules of engagement. Well, the reality is, and I know this is not going to be popular, I'm just going to be, and I could be wrong, but this is just someone from a mindset from the military and law enforcement, what I've been exposed to. If we're really talking about saving the country and saving humanity, and you're battling an enemy that's doing unrestricted warfare, you're never going to win if you play by the rules. You won't.
Sure.
It's an impossibility. So then what that means is you have to have your surface level war, which is, I think, what we're seeing. And this is why I think people need to be honest. Because I think behind that surface level war and the shadow wars, you do have good men that are doing things that are probably definitely gray area, but would probably be considered unlawful or are unlawful. Things that they will take to the grave with them that we'll never know about. Because here's the thing, you don't infiltrate the highest levels of the NIH or the WF or the WHO or government without doing something that's going to, where these people think they can trust you.
But okay, so the information war that we are witnessing play out here, it's never been done before to this level and with these methods. So it's hard for, like, if we were doing like a traditional type of warfare, like overt, kinetic, World War I, World War II, people are going to do bad things in order to win. But I don't think we necessarily know for a fact that we have to excuse away bad behavior in this type of warfare in order for the good guys to win, because we don't know what it would look like. We don't know what it would. First of all, we don't even know if that's what they're doing. That's a level of faith and trust in whoever is doing things behind the scenes that we can't be certain of. That's what it's faith. We don't know for sure, but we also don't know if they just started telling us the truth and exposing these things, what would happen. We use excuses and justifications as to why we think they're not just ripping the Band-Aid off. The reality is, it's possible that what we think is going on isn't what's actually going on. Like there's so much we don't know, right? But if we're going to pursue the truth, shouldn't that start by not even excusing away, like when we think we're seeing lies, even if we think they're coming from good guys and we think they're doing it for benevolent reasons, shouldn't we still be pursuing the truth?
Well, that's why I said our role, because everybody has a role.
Yeah.
Our role is exactly that, always pursuing the truth. Our role is if we happen to come across a good guy who did compromising stuff in the name of humanity, we're still going to hold them accountable, because that's where our culture has to survive. And what I'm saying is the guys that are, doing this undercover work is what I would describe it as. They know the inherent risk they're taking, and they understand they've already made a decision to follow through with what they're going to do. And if they get caught, even by the good people, they understand the consequence of that. And this is just the risk that they're willing to take. But we as the people, our role is always just going to be the pursuit of truth and hold people accountable. As long as, because here's the problem that the Q community has this problem, but even people that don't subscribe to Q but try to decode and figure out what's going on, I see it with them too. It's, well, Trump's doing this because he means this, because it's going to make this person do this. And they're like 7 steps down into the formula where they're like, so that means I should be doing this. That's the error. That is where we fumble the ball every time, because that means we're not being honest. Our job is not to think how Trump or these white hats want us to operate or want us to react. Our job is to have an honest reaction, because when they do, whether it's a psyop or a counter psyop, whatever they do, they're already factoring in the reaction of the populace. So if we go and start thinking, well, this is what they want us to do, you're already messing up the formula that they created. You're actually hindering the operation that they're trying to do. It's very simple for us. Our job simply is to be honest and pursue this country the legal way, the ethical way, the Christian way, like that. That's our obligation.
Yeah.
It's not our responsibility to think and figure out how the white hats are operating. Now, there are some of us that look at these operations and we decode things, but we're not decoding so that this way we can just say, oh, I was right and we're vindicated. That's retarded. That's ego. No, the whole reason that we're supposed to be decoding is so we can see the patterns of what's coming, what the deep state may try to do to counter that, and get ahead of the deep state's agenda. That's it. If you're trying to just solely predict the good guys' work, then that's completely wrong. Here's one, right? And a lot of people say, well, you'll say that because that's kind of validation for the community. And I get it. And the statement's not wrong. But back in the day when people used to do the date fagging, this date on this and on this date and this, and then nothing would ever happen.
People still do that.
They still
told
do
that we were getting EBS on the Super Bowl by multiple people. We didn't get it.
Because of the colors, colors are so retarded. But here's the thing too to consider, though, not to completely shit on the people that do that, is I think there was a time where people were given legitimate information that was predating things that were going to happen. And then when they didn't happen, it's like, well, what happened? Well, what happened was they sacrificed you as the content creator, the influencer, or whatever, because if the deep state has a plan to do something, and enough of us get that information out into the sphere of people to where it starts to have this effect, well, then they have to abandon that operation. One of the things that we talked about, this was a real life incident. Colonel was talking about, I forget the year, but I want to say, was it the 60s, 70s? But anyways, it was before that, because it was with JFK. But when the whole Cuba thing was popping off, and JFK sends the first set of bombers out there to go and lay waste on Cuba, and then he stops the second wave of the bombers going out there, and a lot of people say, oh, it's because he was scared. Well, he wasn't. What happened is you had one of those fake people that was supposed to act like it was a defecting Cuban, Air Force pilot that came into Florida. Well, a photographer, a journalist, caught that photo early in the morning. And so when this all started happening, they published it in the midst of all this going on. So you had a lot of, military people that saw that photo that was published by the news and said, hey, that's not a Cuban airplane. That's a different one. So what happened? They had to shut it down. That operation went void. And so I do believe things like that happen. A single post or an article or a podcast can have an impact on what the deep state's doing if we put out their plan. Now, again, things like that, you're never going to have vindication for, but we shouldn't be seeking vindication. I mean, the end thing that we should all be in pursuit is that we win this country back.
So there's two things you said here that, in my opinion, kind of run contradictory to each other. You said on one hand that when I was talking about, do you think we're still censored or uncensored? And you said no, but I think sometimes the good guys are the ones censoring us. But then also you're like, well, I think we do these decodes so that we can get the message out and kind of front end some of these deep state things. Well, wouldn't it make more sense for the good guys to stop censoring us then? Like, do you see how those two things kind of contradict each other?
Well, for clarification, I do think we're censored. Like, so I didn't. If I said no, I didn't mean to say no. I do think we're censored. I just don't think we're censored by just the bad guys. I think the good guys do too. And I think one of those reasons is I think they are trying to control the flow of certain timelines. There's certain things that they know when it needs to be addressed, and there's certain people that are just really good at their job, whether it be research or decoding, that can come out a little bit too early. So the good guys are going to be like, we're not prepared for that step yet.
Yeah.
And so we are going to either, slow down the traction or bury it. But here's something to pay attention to that a lot of people haven't figured out, and enough people don't talk about this. There are things that you may have posted, and some of you will probably be like, hey, I have noticed this. There may be something you posted 2 years ago. And then all of a sudden you'll see some account. Kind of looks like a bot account, not a lot of original content. We'll go and repost it or like it.
Yeah, I get that all the time.
To me, that could be the good guy saying, hey, we didn't like it then, but start talking about it now. And they're trying to get you to repopulate that message. And we won't know until we start trying that stuff, and we can, it'll be anecdotal, but I mean, it'll be still something we can talk about.
Yeah, Chris makes a good question here, and this is where one of my next thoughts too is, how come the good guys can control our timelines with censorship, but can never control the timelines by actually telling the truth? Like, you would think in an info war, our role is to, like, sometimes I feel like there's a week where my only job that whole week was just going out there and debunking Tom Renz and Health Ranger and these other douchebags out there that are trying to delegitimize Trump. It's like a full-time job, when it would be much easier if the censorship that is being applied to us by the good guys, and I'm with you sometimes I'm with you, like, it's the good guys who are kind of holding us back because we front run and have front run so many damn stories for years now that we're 6 months ahead, 10 months ahead, whatever it is, that it makes sense from the game theory perspective of why they do it, that they would hold us back. But why don't they do that on the other side of the coin and just, hey, maybe if you started censoring the douchebags, the ones spreading the misinformation, maybe then we could make some progress.
So here's my answer to that, and you guys may not accept it, but this is just, I completely believe this. If the good guys just came out right now and gave out all the truth, this is what's been going on, here it is, folks, here's all the truth, you would see a complete collapse of the institution of government and everything. Now, before you say, well, then let it all, because that's everybody's response. Let it all burn. This is why. And this goes back to what I said, that kind of like that moral high ground that we have as Americans. In movies, the good guys rise out of the ashes like a phoenix, but it doesn't happen that way in real life. And we could look around the world and you'll see this. Good is not designed to rise in chaos. The contingency plan to let it all burn to the ground is actually, that's the contingency plan of the deep state. The deep state is the one that's positioned to rise in chaos. And this is how every grassroots organization that we think we have has already been infiltrated. We saw that with the Oath Keepers, the Proud Boys. We saw that with some of the parental groups. We saw that with the convoy groups. Like, every good organic thing we think we have has already been infiltrated. And we see this in countries that have let it burn to the ground. And then when they rise up in 7 to 8 years, we see they're right back in with the UN, or they're right back in with NATO, or these relationships are there again. Why? Because all they've done is, because again, this is their contingency plan. They've put new faces, new names, new logos, and new flags in all these groups, so that when we think we're rising and we think we have these honest leaders, this is the rebranding part. It's just their tyranny rebranded. Sure. And so what'll happen in that situation is, as chaos is unfolding and the bad guys are rising, whether it takes years or decades, it'll get to the point where good guys have to realize we are never going to take power back being good guys. And in that window, innocence is lost. The young, the elderly, people that don't have the ability to fight or won't fight, you lose life. So if we were to allow the entire apparatus to just collapse, morally, it sounds like, yeah, let it happen. But through my perspective, strategy of, military and law enforcement, the cost is far greater, and we still lose in that situation. So what I think is happening is a controlled demolition. And I think that's why they're controlling the timeline.
Sure. I mean, I have a lot of thoughts here because I understand everything you're saying. Like I do. I've played around with the game theory. I've argued both sides of this over the years. Where am I now, though? It's like, why can't we just rip the Band-Aid off? Like, if the good guys are the good guys, what about the founding fathers? They didn't, do a controlled demolition of the British crown to get their own country. They're like, you know what? Enough of this shit. We're going to go to war with you guys. And
they had one advantage we don't.
What's that?
They were forced to operate locally.
We have been too, haven't we?
Well, we should be doing that, but we don't. Like when you look back then, they didn't have the ability with smart devices to communicate with someone, 400 miles away in a matter of seconds. Like that's something that took time. And you had a, somebody that, courier that, had to get on a horse and ride somewhere, get on a boat and go somewhere. In that time, they got to make, real observations during the, their travels where they could see, hey, this is legitimate, this is not legitimate, and they get to report back. Yeah. Now, this weapon of how fast information can be spread, our disadvantage is the same way you can get truth out, they can get propaganda out just as fast. And so because we don't operate locally, that's one of our Achilles heels. If we were operating locally, our chances of surviving, like the entire institution collapsing, I'd probably have a different opinion. But we don't have that right now, and that's why my opinion is, if it was to collapse, we're just locally, we don't have it yet.
See, and this is another thing. I feel like some of the things that we, when we discuss these things, like we give an excuse for something, but then it's contradicted by other excuses. Like we say Trump has it all mapped out, right? Maybe I'm sure at some point we've all said that, and we all probably believe that. Like Trump, he's got a very good, a very good idea of who the bad guys are, who the players are. He knows all the behind the scenes stuff and everything, right? Like, would you largely agree with that?
I don't think he knows all of them, but I think he has a good idea of the majority of them.
Okay. And like what these things have done, like if it's a controlled demolition, that's like a very planned, thought out type of plan. Like you go through a motion and you take it out one by one. If he has all that information and he knows how this ends, to me, like I don't see the need to defend the government in a sense and the bad guys for the sake of the bad guys. Because I think if Trump does have all that information, we could wipe it all out and he could expose it all, and then he could justify doing what needs to be done. I feel like this is one of those excuses we use, and I'm not saying I don't understand why, because I really do, guys. I know a lot of people. Anytime I ask a question of anybody that trusts the plan or is whatever, we have to do this controlled and all those things, everybody's like, oh, Jon just doesn't understand. He's too stupid. He just needs to read the Q drops, all those things. That's absolutely retarded, you guys. I've thought this all out. I game theory. I have these conversations. This is my life. This is what I do every single day. I understand the arguments, but I think people are just so used to giving excuses, and I think the giving of the excuses here is part of our problem. Like we can understand that this is why they're doing something, and that's the excuse that is real and why they're doing it. But we don't have to allow them. Like we don't have to excuse their behavior for them. Like we should be pushing. Don't you think? Like if they want us to be front running stories, and that's why we're doing decodes, wouldn't it make sense to front run the entire end game as well and try to get there as quick as we can? Because what if what they're waiting for is us to be there at the end for them, and instead we're sitting here excusing away the reason it's taking so long when we could front run that whole thing as well? Does that make sense?
Oh, it does make sense. Well, I do think that. So, spoiler alert, trust the plan is not Trump in the White Hat saving us through my perspective at all. Trust the plan's in phase for me is a collaboration of we the people with the president and the White Hats, because to me, White Hats, our military, that's just an extension of the American people. It's not a separate entity. Those are still Americans.
So who controls the timeline then, if it's a collaboration?
Well, to go back to a statement you made, if Trump knows how this ends, I don't think he knows how it ends. I think he knows that there's these different pathways and there's these potential endings, But I think I think what we're seeing is a fluid operation. And this goes back to crazy life story, the way God positions us to learn things that all of a sudden have meaning later, just to put that in there, shout out. Um, when I was working for the school district, when I was fighting back for my career, and they put me in charge of the gang stuff, the director came to me and he says, "Hey, we want a gang program." And I was like, "Okay." He's like, "Because we have a major issue with gangs in the Palm Springs Unified School District, and we want it to be dealt with." And I was like, "All right, well, here's the thing, right? Just give me an honest answer because I need to know how much of myself to commit to this. Are you trying to come up with an operation so you can tell the parents, hey, we're doing something, it goes in the newspapers, and then 30, 45 days from now, it's just going to end up on your desk somewhere? Or are you looking for a legitimate operation to really deal with this? This way I know where to invest myself." He's like, "No, we want a plan." So then I get into researching and started looking at all the gang, the gang plans that schools have deployed, coast to coast in this country. Bunch of great programs. One of the programs called GREAT. And the one thing that I saw, and I promise you guys this will make sense to the conversation we're having here. One of the things that I saw was all these plans that were designed to deal with the gang problems in the schools were great plans, but they were only designed to deal with gangs in that moment where the problem was. Gangs are not an object. It's a living organism.
Yeah.
And so what happens? Well, as these new rules and these plans are deployed, the gangs adjust to it. And so then that plan that was great at one time, it just becomes ineffective because they learn to work around it. And I saw this plan after plan after plan. So I said, damn, how do I solve this? And so, and if anybody's school districts out there that want this, reach out to me. We can still make something happen. What I figured was you have to design an operation that can grow and be adjusted as the adversary component of it adjusts to it, which means it goes back to a thing, KISS, keep it simple, stupid. It had to be something that attacked every variable of the gang, but it had to be something that was simple enough and fluid enough that 5 years from now, when the gang adjusts to it, whoever is working gangs at the time can see the concept of how you address this and evolve with the gang. And it took a very long time, but I was able to orchestrate this plan. Well, when I started to look at what we're seeing here with the Q, when I started getting to this, I started seeing how things were unfolding. I was like, I bet you what they have here is a fluid operational plan. This is not a plan where page 2000 tells you in 2027, this is where we're going to be, what it's going to do. It's like that book. Well, if they do this, we do this. And if we do this and they do this, and it's just this branching thing. And that's why I think artificial intelligence is a huge part of what's probably being utilized by Q and the good guys. But I don't think that there's a definitive ending that Trump's aware of right now. I think he's aware of the good potential endings, and I think he's aware of the bad potential endings. And I think, and again, to what you said, why don't we just do this? We should. Like everything you've been saying, I agree with you completely. That's what we should be doing on our side, is we the people, the populace. Trump and them are going to adjust to that. And I think in large part because some of the things you're talking about, like if they do this and we're pissed off about it, shouldn't we do this? Well, I think, yeah, because that's probably why they did it. So, and that's why I said, if we just react honestly, then I think we're doing our part. I think, oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I think the greatest error that the Q community movement has done, and I know some people are going to get mad at me for this one because they always do, is the misrepresentation of patriots are in control, and that everything's already been solved and we're just watching a movie.
Yeah.
I think that's the greatest sin that this community's ever done, because all that does is that actually influences static behavior. Yep. Okay, well, somebody's already doing it. And if you go and you read through different drops, there's several drops that just by what they're explaining requires active involvement. Something as simple as save it, take it offline, to share it later. That's not telling you to stay static. That's telling you to have an active role. Do I think, are there certain things that are, we're watching a movie that are scripted out? Yeah, I think so. But I think it becomes laziness when we start to attribute everything to that. Everything's a decode. Everything's a movie script. Everything's that. I think that's one of the things that has hurt the community the most.
Have you not tried trusting the plan at all? Because like
I do trust the plan.
I hear if you do that, you can't say that on this show because we don't know what the plan is. You can't trust something you don't know.
I think I have a good idea of the intentions. So I know the plan that
we trust what you think the plan is.
Well, here's
but you don't know it.
I'll explain. I trust what we've already witnessed and lived, and I trust what we're actively living now. And when you use the years of all those data points, I think that gives us the ability to develop a fair assessment of what's coming.
Sure. I mean, I get you. And okay, so what you said there about and I agree with you. Okay. And I see like some people in the chat, Joe Gilmore is like, John talks about trust the plan more than anybody I know. There's a lot of people that come into our chats who don't like the way that some of us talk about Q. And a lot of like my thoughts about the Q drops and like 10 people that happen to be decoders and who are just full of shit constantly. I feel like they're literally holding the movement back. And the amount of damage they've attempted to do to us, like I have and I can recognize this, I have a skewed view of some Q decoders because of how they've treated me in Badlands. Okay. And I recognize that, and it's probably not right. It's not fair, but it is what it is. But when it comes to the Q drops and the information itself, like I've seen so many like Q drops that hit that are like, well, that's like kind of undeniable. That's pretty crazy. You know, I still poke fun at it or whatever, but the Q drops, the information that are in there, you can look at that and that's great. But I totally agree with you and have been saying this for a long time that the people who are saying trust the plan, like did I ever show you the guy who posted the thing that was like, there's literally nothing we can do except sit back and opine and then go vote the way they tell you to vote, but it's full control. You're watching a movie. Like that kind of mindset, just it's never ever clicked for me. And the fact that there are so many people that are in that mindset, I do feel like that's a problem because and if it's a problem and we recognize it's a problem, we should be trying to call that out and break people from that spell. That's my belief. But then it's formed like this shell around that mindset. And if you start to question that, not only do you get hit with like all sorts of just, well, you know, disinformation is necessary and all these other things, but you also get like attacked and people start going after you when you're like questioning their confirmation bias and all this stuff. And it doesn't make sense to me when the Q drops that I have seen, I haven't read through them all. So maybe I'm speaking out of turn here, but the Q drops I have seen, like they're trying to challenge you to think critically. Yet when we try to do that, when we try to get you to think critically, like the Q drops do, we're the enemy now because we just so happen to be trying to get you to think critically of the Q drops, which you are defending. So, you know, it's not even the Q drops, it's the Q decoders. Those are two separate things to me, decoders and the drops. But do you understand what I'm saying? Like
I do. And I understand it from the audience perspective. So for the audience listening, look, I'm in the private chat with these guys. Okay. All right. You think you guys have to read some shit. I got to read some shit. So I'm just like jerks. Right. Because I don't
Why
like
don't you ever hop in and go back and forth with us, man?
Well, because you're going to know right now because I read something and I say jerks. And then I say, okay, why did that give me an emotional reaction? Why? Because I feel a certain way. Okay. Now that my feelings are set aside, what's the logical take on this? So then I go and I start doing my research and I start doing all this stuff. And guess what it did? I'll go and I'll address that issue and I'll do it in a post. I'll do it in a thread. I'll do it in a podcast where now, because you guys did that and it forced me to defend my position, to not know something, but can I articulate it? Can I explain it to people? And now I'm in a better position to go out and do that. And that's the way people need to respond. Because like you said, you made a critical thinker. When I saw something in the chat I didn't like, it forced me to critically think. And then I took that opportunity to go and use it as a teaching moment. And that's what Q was. That's what the boards were doing. So what you're saying right now, I agree with you. We got to stop being so damn sensitive. You know, we got to get back to being, you know, we talk about, you know, everybody wants to be a patriot, so it's time to do, you know, patriot shit. Well, everybody wants to, you know, be a patriot, but doesn't want to have a patriot's mentality. You can't.
I like that.
You can't be sensitive to things. We need opposing views. If we all are agreeing, somebody's lying.
Question for you here. So Joe Gilmore keeps saying, John needs to read the Q books by Praying Medic. I get this all the time. Like, dude, just go read the drops. Go read the drops. Do you think it's actually necessary in 2026 for me to go and read the drops?
It's not going to hurt you. There's benefit that would come out of it for you. However, your role in the mission that you have, it's not going to be really beneficial to you there, because the time investment that you would need to do, you would have to kind of restructure what your priorities are. And right now you have a more broad spectrum of things that you do. So for you individually, I would say, I mean, yeah, it would help. I don't see it as a necessity.
What would it help with?
I think what the drops are important for is, right now you have this conversation that's resurfacing in the media, even in mainstream media. This is the opportunity for us to capitalize and grow the community by being logical. If you have these people that are just finally getting exposed to Q, or maybe they were exposed to it 6-7 years ago and were like, this is retarded. And now because they see mainstream media acknowledging it, granted, they're saying QAnon, but you get it, the verbiage. And now they're coming back saying, hey, let me give this another look. And then you come in and you tell them, yeah, man, just chill out on the couch. The white hat's got this. They're going to be like, what? What are you talking about? Like, I'm still seeing this. You're not going to win them over. But if you tell them, hey, yeah, look, there's this board. And in this board, there's a bunch of posts that were strategically designed to decentralize information, to get us to start thinking, to make a bunch of detectives and investigators. So this way, anytime an agenda, because it was one of the roles that it had was for us to pick out psyops. And so that we could rug pull the psyops when they did it. And
I feel like I do, though. Like,
you do. So here's the thing. There's a lot of people doing parts of what the Q boards were intended to do that have never subscribed to Q. It's, to use an example, there's a lot of people that live holy lives that have never read the Bible.
So am I not going to heaven by not reading the Q drops? Is that what you're saying?
It just, we see, yeah. No, I'm not going to say that, man. No, I'm saying there's a bunch of different communities that are out there. And I think that's what people have to understand. When Trump goes out and he speaks, whether you say 4D chess or 5D chess, it's the understanding that he's communicating in one message to a bunch of different, targeted groups or targeted audiences. And you just have to understand, with your level of understanding and what your role is and where you're at in this digital battlefield, what was the interpretation, for you? How do you see it? And like I said, the simplest thing people can adopt is just be honest.
But so that mindset, though, of people, because there's a lot of people in this chat, and there's a lot of people that come to my chats and all the time. It's like, John, you just don't understand because you haven't read the drops. Do you think that approach towards people, because if they're saying that to me, how many other people are they saying that to and turning off by that? Like, I'm turned off. I'm turned all the way off right now by you guys saying that to me, guys. But do you know what I mean? Like, you go to people and you're just like, well, you don't understand. You just haven't read the drops yet. And honestly, by now, after all the bullshit I've seen online and the people that have been in Badlands, like, I probably have seen most of the drops by now, by people sharing them all over. But regardless, like, but it's almost like a litmus test. Like, if you haven't read the drops yet, and this is what people use as their approach towards other people, I feel like that is a non-welcoming way to get people to wake up, when you are the same people that are telling us that we're just trying to wake up the normies. Like, are we supposed to wake up the normies by telling them, like, okay, you can join our club after you read the Q drops? Like, do you understand what I'm saying?
I do, but it's all too situational. It's going to deal with the individual relationships. It's going to deal with, certain, there's no template of the correct way to handle it. I mean, we could be generalized and broad, but at the end of the day, people know who they're communicating with. What I would say, what I tell people is, hey, don't shit on the boards if you haven't studied them, because you don't know.
Yeah.
I'll say that, but at the same time, it's also what's your intention. Like, at this point in the game, you already understand psyops, you get it. You already understand, clandestine operations, good guy operations. Like, you get a lot of that. So you wouldn't be studying the boards in order to break free of the matrix, because you already understand. You have the scope of that understanding. The whole purpose of you to be reading them would be to, okay, I want to see what's going on in this world that I've already been awakened to, but I want to see it through the lens of these people. And because I want to see does the board actually validate itself? And yeah, like I said, there's some positivity that can come out of that, but given your role, I wouldn't say it's an absolute necessity. I think for the people that do subscribe to the boards and are trying to grow the community, It's, you know these relationships, communicate with these people so that they understand. Because here's the one thing, and people get mad at me when I say this too. The boards don't tell us. They tell us misinformation, disinformation are in there. They exist. It doesn't say, hey, 80% true, 20% false, or 20% true, 80% false. Like, we don't know. So the only things that we know for sure are, timestamp deltas, things that have come to fruition like that. Yeah, we can articulate that. But the other stuff we don't know. We don't know, and until it's come to pass. So it's people have to understand, what is your role? What's the skill set you have, and then when you study the boards, how do you apply that to what your role is?
Okay, I like that. We should get a quick word. We have another sponsor we got to get to, and then when I come back, I don't mind this Q conversation. I think having a discussion about Q, normally when we do it, it's like me and Bernie Bright or me and Chris, and like we obviously have a certain perspective of Q, and it's slanted by some of the behavior of other former Badlanders or whatever. But having a conversation with you, one of my best friends, love you like a brother. You're on Badlands, and you have a different approach to Q, and I think this is like a healthy conversation that it needs to be had. But I also said we could take calls, so I don't know where I want to go with this after here. But
I do want to make sure we at least cover what's your red line, because I want the audience to really think about that.
Okay, you have to get ready to phrase it. When we come back from Lean, we might actually do 2 commercials real quick. First up, we got Lean. Everybody's talking about weight loss injections because the results are so dramatic. They work by lowering blood sugar and reducing appetite. So what if you're looking to lose weight but not interested in painful weekly injections, especially when you hear about some of those intense side effects? That's why doctors created a weight loss supplement called Lean, and the results are remarkable. The studied ingredients in Lean have been shown to lower your blood sugar, burn fat by converting it into energy, and curb your appetite and cravings so you're not as hungry. But listen, Lean is not for the casual dieter with only a few pounds to lose. The doctors at Brickhouse Nutrition created Lean for frustrated dieters with 10 or more pounds to lose. We can get you started with 20% off and free rush shipping so you can add Lean to your healthy diet and exercise plan. Visit takelean.com and enter DPH for your discount. That's promo code DPH at takelean.com. Thank you to Lean and Rumble. And let me see if I got a Rumble Studio ad that might finally work. Come on, Rumble Wallet. Dang it, it's doing it again. Have you been having issues with your Rumble Wallet?
I have. What I do is because I use the Studio on the laptop. I'll refresh the whole browser, and that'll fix it. And it doesn't kick you.
Okay, let me try that.
And watch this. There's a time that it kicks.
Yeah, the whole thing gets.
But yeah, you'll refresh.
It works. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. They can cancel your accounts. They can freeze your cards. They can decide what you're allowed to buy, say, or support. Big banks and financial institutions have total control, and they use it. That's why financial independence matters now more than ever. Introducing Rumble Wallet, a wallet built for real freedom. With Rumble Wallet, you can control your money, not a bank, not a government, not a tech company. Buy digital assets like Tether Gold, and Bitcoin in one secure place. No permission, no middleman, no cancel button. And when you want to support the creators you actually believe in, you can use the Rumble Wallet app to directly tip content creators securely, instantly, and without interference. This isn't a credit line they can shut off. It's your wallet permanently. Yours to protect your future, yours to protect your family. When the system fails, when institutions turn on their own people, financial sovereignty is the difference between security and vulnerability. Rumble Wallet isn't about politics. It's about freedom, ownership, and protecting what's yours. So take control today. Download Rumble Wallet now and step away from the big banks for good. True ownership, true protection, and true financial freedom. All right, man. Let's talk red lines.
So here, before we get into the red line, I wish I would have grabbed who said it so I can, give them a shout out. But whoever said it in Rumble was like, I wish Alpha would tell Jon about the calm last night. I'm absolutely going to. So
there's a bunch of people saying that, yeah. So last night save me from eternal damnation. Let's see it.
So it's not going to save you from eternal damnation, but these are those things where it's again, it's a confidence thing, right? It's a vindication thing. Last night we're doing DEFCON, and me and Josh are covering some stuff. And Josh comes out and says, Scavino, if you're listening, give us a call, man. Like, we could use one, right? And within a few minutes of it, at midnight 55 on the East Coast, right? 00:55, Scavino drops a 17-second video. And for those of you who know that video, it's the I can feel you coming in the air tonight. Right, that one, right?
Okay, sing it again. I don't think I've heard
I'm
it.
not, because you get it one time out of me, man. That's it. But he does that. So you have the timestamp on it, 55 5x5. If you're going off the boards, that goes back to the super one that we all anticipate, right? Look to Twitter. The storm is upon us. But again, you also have 5x5, loud and clear. I'm listening. The comms are good. And then 17 seconds, obviously.
Okay, hold on. You're going way too fast. Remember, I don't know anything. I don't know what you're talking about. So let's find this. It's a 17-second video.
Here, I'll drop the link for you.
Last night,
I had Josh that on there. Drop it in the private chat for you. It is right there. You go. I just put in the private chat.
Okay. So let's pull this up so we can all see what we're talking about. Okay. So here we go. We asked for it on DEF CON and he lived. So you guys asked for
we asked for a com. Well, Josh, we're a team, right? He asked for the comm that they're listening on DEF CON. And shortly thereafter, we get this drop from Scubino.
Okay, can I ask you a question before we even do this about comms? Because just the other day, I think it was 2 days ago, one of my admins from my Spitballers chat group, he said, like, yeah, you know that they the Q drops say that there's no comms outside the Q drops or the boards. And then he sent I'll pull the screenshot up just so you can see what I'm talking about. Hold for processing, because I think this is a question I have.
Yeah, that's a different. Yes, he's right on that, but it's not this. What he's talking about, or what the boards are referencing here, is like Alex Jones, right? Q's communicating with me, right? Or these people saying, yeah, I was reached out to from the Q team. They're giving me this information. They're communicating. That's not. Those are grifters. Those are infiltrators. Those are people that are lying.
Well, it says right here, like, no other platforms use, no comms outside this platform, no comms made outside of this platform, like multiple drops.
This was also before the boards got compromised. And then later on, when you go through the posts, you learn about the boards being compromised, the acknowledgement of it, and the changing of these different codes. And so, and that's why the evolution and story of the boards and kind of how it evolved as it went is important. But again,
that's fair.
The message here, though, is the comms of, hey, yeah, I'm communicating with the Q team, or they're telling me this, or hey, I have a leak, like bullshit. These comms and this was, this happened a lot more frequently during the original days of Q, even long before I became aware. Like during the days of like Brad and Josh and these guys that were like in the very beginning, they would ask, hey, like Tippy Top, the famous, the rabbit one, and then Trump goes and does that, or hey, do this, those kind of comms. So this was one of those types of moments, which it's kind of happened fairly consistent on DEF CON. We've kind of experienced this on DEF CON quite a few times.
We've joked about it too on DPH. Like, oh, remember that time we talked about this, and the next day or a couple days later, Trump does this. Like, maybe if they're watching it, probably not, but maybe, I don't know. and by the way, guys, like him showing me this is not going to all of a sudden change my mind that. Like you guys are treating it as if I don't think the Q drops were legit. I already think that. Go read my part 23. Like, you're telling me I have to read the Q drops. You just have to scroll to the end of my part 23. The last, in the last section, in the closing section, I logically explained why I think the Q drops are legitimate without even having to read them. Like, I'm already there.
You just addressed one of my pet peeves. And again, I love the audience, and you guys know I'm honest, so you guys can get mad at me again. If you are trying to use Q and comms like this to merely state, see, it's real, or vindicated, then you've missed the mission. That's not what it's about. It was established long ago for anyone that's already an Anon or a digital soldier. It was already established. If anyone says, well, is Q real? When people ask me that question, I go, you're asking the wrong question, because you can go to the boards and see it. Yeah, it's real. I think the question that's being asked, is it something that's a good guy operation, a bad guy operation, or a kid in his basement? And I think the one thing that proved it's not a kid in his basement is that you have two different presidential administrations, a third now, but two at the time, one that was Democrat, one that was Republican, and neither one of them identified it. Neither one of them took it down.
Sure.
And I think that was very important to at least, leave the idea that it's a kid down in his basement, at least eradicated, that theory. And I think that's the more appropriate question. Is it a good guy operation or is it a bad guy operation? I think that is a fair question. But
well, why do you? No, let's go through this, and then I have a question about just the concept of comms and hat tips and stuff, and why you think they even do them. Let's watch this quick. Okay, so
I was fired up last night when this happened, bro.
Okay, well, why? Like, so I understand the 17-second long video, but
so why? And what was the point of this? Me personally, and I'll say with Josh, because we did debrief this afterwards after the show, and we were both aligned in thought on here. Is right now, and you brought up this point, there are a lot of people that have infiltrated the Q group, and they're grifting off of it, and they're misleading people, and people are very loyal. So when they attach themselves to something, it's hard for them to separate from that. And in that process, they can get misled, and that hurts the mission goal of what Q was for. And so I do think that the people that are behind Q are utilizing comms like this to help the audience show, hey, when certain groups are asking for something for a confirmation, look at who we're doing that with. I think it's one of those things that's like, look, hey, we're kind of rubber stamping these guys for now, because anybody can, turn bad, right? We're going to rubber stamp these guys for now, because maybe these guys have been over the target. These guys have been consistent with some of the things that they've been talking about. And that's a way of people, because then people share, like you saw in the chat, and I saw it all, a bunch of people were tagging me and stuff today, and people see that and they're like, hey man, if these guys ask for something and a few minutes later Scavino drops that, maybe there's something there. Let's go check these dudes out. And then they get exposed to our content and the way we kind of, go about when it comes to Q. So I think the purpose of it is that. I think the way he went about it is you do a 17-second video. In this community, 17 is not going to get overlooked. People are going to say, yep, that's Q. I think doing it at that hour, 55, you know what I mean, specifically, gives you the 5x5. So even if you ignore the actual Q post, which I love, 55, if you just look at it as 5x5 for, we're loud and clear, we hear you, the comms are good, that coincides with the request that was made. So the video kind of coincides with the request that was made by us, if you subscribe to the idea that that's how it played out.
But wouldn't it be like a lot easier for them to just be like, hey guys, go watch DEF CON? Like if Dan Scavino is like, over the target, go watch DEF CON right now. That's a lot better than like, here's a little 17-second video.
I would prefer that. You would prefer that. A lot of our community would, but then that would immediately get weaponized against, by Congress. Look at this guy's over here and he's pushing, this conspiracy channel. We're supposed to take this guy serious because, the Mockingbird media still exists. The deep state apparatus still exists. And if these guys go out and acknowledge these things, it's going to be weaponized against them.
Yeah, but I feel like there's plenty of people who are saying rhetoric like that, who Trump has done interviews with. And
I think what they're doing, because I've been paying attention to this, is certain accounts are following people, especially people from Badlands, that are in very important roles within the United States government. And why would these people just be following these content creators when, people could look at it and be like, hey, why are you following this? I mean, Media Matters does it. You've been a victim of them several times.
Oh, yeah. I am the leading Q and on adjacent promoter, according to.
I was kind of butthurt when they went after. I was like, I'm not even gonna get a shout out on that one. Like, come on, man. Like, but no, they've done enough to make my life miserable in the past, anyways. But I here's the other thing too. That would be too easy, John. Where's the work? Where's it's like, when I say, God, just let me win the lotto. Well, yeah, then I think, life be a whole lot easier, but then he'd be like, yeah, but then you're gonna be lazy because now you got hundreds of millions of dollars.
But we're not asking God for money. We're asking, human beings who in my opinion, are just like, to a lot, and I've done it too, but we're justifying them lying to us at a large, massive scale to stop lying to us. Like, that's essentially what I'm asking, is like, just be direct. Just tell us what's going on. Tell us the truth. Tell us these things. And a lot of people are like, well, they can't do that. They have to speak to us in code instead to let us know that we're on the target, but they're going to keep us censored. They're going to keep us off all these platforms, but we'll know that we're doing the right thing because we think we've decoded the thing the right way. You know what I mean?
So I do know what you mean. And let me offer you this perspective. And this is in an article that I wrote recently too. It's for the arrests, right? Everybody's like, one, there's been a lot of arrests, but I know what people mean when they're talking about it. We haven't seen the Obama. We haven't seen the Hillary Clinton, right? Like we haven't seen one of those like tier 1 arrests.
Yeah.
Let's just say Trump would have came in January 2025 and just boom, just hit the board. Brennan, Bolton, Rice, all of them, this shackles and off to Gitmo, and we get into tribunals. Well, what do we all get out of that? We get vindication. We told you, see, these people did it. All this evil stuff they did, like we told you guys. And now they're all going to be held accountable, whatever the sentence of the end of treason applies, right? And we're like, well, what's the issue with that? The issue with that is they saved us. Trump saved us. The DOJ saved us. The White Hat saved us. And at the end of that, eventually, Trump's reign's going to expire. There's going to be a time where, we get back into this voting process, assuming that the elections and all that themselves, get fixed and they're fair and transparent. What we're seeing here, and I think this is why being honest in these frustrations is important, is the deep state is not afraid of arrests. The deep state's not afraid of our podcasts. They're not afraid of Substacks. They're not afraid of any of those things, because if we arrest Obama and Clinton, they got 100 puppets lined up behind each one of them. There's one thing that the deep state fears aside from God, and that's the exposure of how the mechanism works. And what I think we have been shown through these frustrations, why did Trump come out and use those tariff rules if he knew these other ones were better? Because in the resistance process, we all got to live the experience and learn the experience of how they combat us, how the Supreme Court is compromised, how the lawfare is weaponized, how the NGOs are, USAID, national. We have gone, and just if you look from January 2025 to now, we have been exposed to how the mechanism works. And the reason that's important, because I think the end of this, it leads to arrests regardless. But when those arrests come, we now have the knowledge base that when we the people recognize the power we have, we now know how to make sure it never happens again, because we witnessed and lived how it works. And I think that's why we're going through these growing pains.
Yeah, but again, like I understand.
Point, huh? Yeah, I saw.
No. I mean, I understand it. I've heard that argument before, but also it's like I'm thinking about this last year, and I don't think more people understand things than before.
They do.
The people that are invested in this, yes. The people that have been paying attention, yes. But like the normies who we are trying to wake up, that at least that's what we're told. Those people don't understand anything more than they did. If anything, they're more retarded. Like people have gotten more retarded over the last couple of years. And also like in terms of this Q drop, like if it would have been at 11:56, you guys would have reacted the same way, right? And 11:57, like and this is kind of my problem with some of the Q decodes. Again, some of them are like pretty damn like hard to even play skeptic to, which I love playing skeptic. I love playing devil's advocate. That's like my natural role in things, I feel. But sometimes I can't do that. Sometimes I can. But if that post would have been 11:56, we would have had everybody like, oh my God, hat tip. 11:57, oh my God, hat tip. Like it wouldn't matter what time of day, anything, as long as it's a 17-second video, you can call it a hat tip. And I feel like that's a problem with the drops and the way the people approach them.
The audience is going to back me up on here. This is why you got to watch DEF CON. The one thing, and I'll actually, I'll give Josh a lot of credit because he's actually made me better at this too. The one thing that we do different, and our audience will back me up on this, than any other Q show that's out there, is if it doesn't have context, then it doesn't matter. We have to find context to something that's happening right now for it to have relevance. And I'll bring stuff to Josh's attention all the time with deltas. I'll be like, hey man, came across these, what do you think? And we'll look and we'll be like, yeah, there's a date stamp. Yeah, there's an hour match, but there's no context here. And so we just tell the audience, there's no context on this one. Let's move on. And I think that is why DEF CON has been so successful at Badlands. And I think it's because of the approach of that, because you're right. There are a lot of people, listen, and this was an issue with, with detectives. with they're young and they're eager, they would make the crime scene fit their theory instead of their theory adjusting to the evidence of the crime scene. And I think when you look at Q, you can make anything fit if you really want to. Like, you can stretch it. But at the end of the day, what's the context? Was it, did it bring something into the fold that you can turn around and say, hey, if we look at this and we look back to, 2018, this was going down with Iran at that time, and now we're seeing these talks with Iran here. Maybe we should start looking in the direction of this to see what happens and what's coming. And then if something comes, they're like, okay, we interpreted this the correct way. So let's go back, let's revisit this, see if there's something that we missed that applies to here. And that's good decoding. That's good strategic mapping out. But if you just want to say, hey, and I've done it from time to time because, I want to be an asshole sometimes too. But one of the worst things that happens in this community is this post. If you know, you know. It's
Probably
like
just a coincidence, right?
It's like, come on. Like, don't play that way no more. Because now what my interpretation, and like I said, I'm being a hypocrite because every now and then I still do it too.
Mm-hmm.
But when I see, if you know, what I interpret that as now is, okay, you don't know because you would have put it out. That's what it really means. You don't know. Yeah. And so I think one of the things that can really benefit the community is if everybody started to do that. Where's the context? And here's the thing. If the audience started to hold other Q shows or podcasts or Substacks to that standard, hey, don't tell me if you know, explain it, map it out for me. Then they're either going to be like, all right, here, this is what I meant. And you'll be like, okay, that makes sense and there's context. Or they're going to be like, do the research yourself, bro. Then you're going to be like, so maybe you don't know. Well, now you're trolling. Now, then you kind of see, you can start to be like, you know what? Maybe I'm following the wrong person here. And then that's the whole thing. If you're going to be following some, because it's very important, within the Q community, if you're going to be following people and giving them your time or maybe even monetarily supporting them, you need to make sure you're holding them accountable to the information that they've been entrusted with. And if they can't,
it shouldn't just be Q shows. It should be everything. Like that should be the approach to information always. And that's my approach. And that just so happens to make me a skeptic and hated by people in the Q community for some reason. Like, you should go back and read through the chat sometime or the comments of the show when this is done.
I will. I have the chat going up all.
Yeah, it's so ridiculous because I feel like I have probably been, and this is, you guys are going to hate this too. You're going to hate it, but it's probably true. I have been the most supportive person of Q content probably ever in terms of like giving a platform and financially supporting people who provide Q content. Like, I gave them my platform for that. I do my best to financially support people who do Q content and have since Badlands started, like, for a long time. I'm very supportive of the Q drops and people who talk about Q. Yet this is my approach to the information, and people don't like that. Yet they can't seem to square those two things. Isn't that weird?
It's weird, but I can understand from both sides. Here's what I'll say in defense of you, because there's a lot of people here that love DEFCON. They love Q After Hours. When I approached John and said, hey, me and Josh have this idea and we'd like to bring it to Badlands. Now, without going into the whole mole of drama, we all know what was there wasn't a whole lot of distance between something that happened in that moment when I asked John if he was okay with this idea from me and Josh. Now, I knew before asking him, chances are he's probably going to say no, because he's like, I just got done with this headache. I ain't trying to revisit this headache again.
The headache had nothing to do with the Q drops, though, by the way.
I know, but just the perception of it. You know what I mean? Because the perception did exist out in the realm. And I'll tell people, if you guys trust me, there was zero hesitation from John. He said, yeah, let's give it a run for a couple of weeks, and if people like it, we'll stick around with it. It was that simple. Mm-hmm. And so, I do kind of like, man, it sucks when people have this perception. He doesn't support it. I would argue, the top Q show is on Badlands, and it's there because the man that's right here next to me said, yeah, go for it, you guys. And so that's
this right now is, I think the DPH has now become the top Q show, this discussion, probably. Just kidding. But yeah, I appreciate that.
I mean, it's the truth. And listen, I'm not saying that I have it absolutely right. I just think by a lot of stuff that me and Josh have experienced doing this show, some of the things that we've interpreted as comms with context, I think it is a signal that our approach is the right one. And I think that's why the show has done well. So, people could judge it how they want, though.
Yeah.
But to the red line, because
let's talk it. Red line.
So one of the things that I told John that I want to have a discussion on is, what's your red line? And I'm not just talking about John, I'm talking to myself, I'm talking to every one of you that's watching or listening. You have to know what your red line is. Like, what is the threshold? If this is an information war and there's psychological operations, what's the threshold before you say, okay, I'm done, that's enough, and now I have to adjust how I'm going to approach this? And that could mean a very many different things to a bunch of different people. So disclaimer, I'm not referencing anything illegal, unethical, or anything like that. Within the realms of being legal, ethical, and within the Constitution, what is your red line? Like, have people thought about that? Because if you don't know, then how do you know when you've been pushed too far? And if you're waiting to that moment to when you've been pushed too far or you've been subjected to too much, well, now you don't even have a plan to adopt for it, because you're barely realizing, like, hey, this is just too much. I don't want to deal with it anymore. And I think,
what's your red line?
So prior to Trump taking office, when we knew he won, my red line was we have to see significant action either right before midterms or right after midterms, like in that window. And the reason being for me is, and I said, and I've always told people, I'm willing to adjust this depending on the things that we see happening, right? And as long as I'm satisfied with things that I'm seeing happening, I don't mind moving the goalposts on my red line a little bit. But the reason I chose midterms is just understanding the legal structure and the judicial process. If we don't have things legally secured for our elections in that window, and then all of a sudden we say, well, he's still got 2 more years. Well, by the time we apply it and that stuff goes to court, they can drag this out by the time we get to 2028, and then it's too late. Like, we're definitely looking at a very bad situation. If we're looking for, I'm not saying all the arrests, but some significant arrests around that time frame to show us that this is the direction that we're going, good, because we know how long that process would take in court. So my red line has always been either a little before midterms or a little bit after midterms. We need to see something significant that is irrefutable to everybody, not just the Q community, to everybody, that, hey, this is the direction we're going. We've seen a significant move, not talk. I'm talking actions, policies, laws, physical arrest, things like that, that we've seen something that's absolutely irrefutable with elections, or something that's absolutely irrefutable with, these RICO cases or arrests that are coming. And, it was one of the things that kind of got me very happy. I was like, okay, this is kind of the direction I want to go, is when we saw what happened with Comey and Bolton. But that in of itself is not enough. Like, we need
Comey thing fell through too.
It did. And we all, we all started.
I said that, and people got mad at me, like, oh, you're just a doomer. It's like, this is looking good, guys. It's just timing. We're going to try it again. Just timing.
So right now, that's kind of the window of my red line. And, what is my intentions if we get to that point? My intentions at that point is I will start to push, not subvert my president, because he has my absolute support, but I probably would be publicly a little bit more critical, a little bit more hard on the way I'm critical, because now we're dealing with time sensitive. It's time sensitive.
Well, if something's a red line, I don't, in my opinion, I don't think a red line item should have a time frame. Like, I think if it's a red line item, it's a red line item. Like, if we know that we can't move on to the next phase without exposing our elections, which is what we've been saying for a long time, like, I'm not going to justify any time frame on that. I'm just going to keep advocating for it and call out bullshit when I see it until that's done. Like,
well, but that's what I mean. That's why it's the red line, because if we haven't met that threshold at that window, then we're done already. You can keep calling for it, but even if they said, yeah, 3 months, we're going to do it, it's too late.
Yeah.
Like the window there. Now, granted, we are in unprecedented times. And that's why I'm saying, if those things that are my red line, the elections and some of these arrests, there has to be things that mirror it, that have the same significant power threshold, like against the government, like the impact these things, like, okay, what I wanted to happen didn't happen, but this happened, and this is just as significant, and this is just as powerful. That's what I'm saying. Okay, there's movement here that I'm okay with, and so I'll make the adjustments to these things. But in the absence of that stuff, if those things aren't met, well, that's my red line, and this is where I change the course of how I handle things.
Do you think our elections were fixed in 2024? Like, do you think they're Do you think the elections in 2024 were more legitimate than they were in 2020?
No.
Okay. Do you think like why the time frame? Is it the midterms your driving force for like having elections fixed?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we don't. If we have to have them, we have to have. I won't say completely fixed, but we have to have some of the basics that we've requested implemented, like voter ID. We got to have that going into midterms. If we don't have voter ID going into midterms, and well, we're going to have it when it comes 2028. The risk versus benefit there is too dangerous. It's too much of a wild card.
Do you think voter ID fixes our elections?
It's part of fixing it. It doesn't fix it in of itself. We still got to do single day voting. We still got to do paper ballots. You know, there's a bunch of different things that all have to happen. But that is one of the significant ones. You know, I mean, there's a whole lot. The voter rolls. There's a lot that goes into play.
Well, what my concern is, the way I've seen the info war handled so far through the second Trump administration, that I do not trust the people, the general people, to understand that the SAVE Act is not the end all be all, like Una Panuna Banca says it is. Like she literally had a post today. Oh, I should pull this up because this is so bad. Hold for processing here. This is going to kind of prove my point.
You need to get one of those loading GIFs that you could just click on when you're doing something.
Yeah. Where's it at? Here. She says, Leader Thune is going to be the reason why our elections are secured from here on out if he does this. Talking about the SAVE Act. If Jon Thune is able to get the SAVE Act passed in the Senate, Anna Paulina Luna says our elections are secured from here on out. That is the mindset that Con Inc. is going with, that the Uniparty is going with. Everybody's going with it. It's like, we just need the SAVE Act. That's all we need. And then we're fixed from here on out. And we're going to be enslaved for the next 40 years again because the SAVE Act isn't enough. Not even close. It's a good first step. I can acknowledge that. I'm not dooming here. This is like the truth, guys. The SAVE Act does not fix the myriad of reasons our elections are illegitimate. Okay. And so like just getting this thing passed I'm worried it's going to be a placation. And, you know, while I understand, I think there's something bigger going on behind the scenes. I wrote the Devolution series. I think there is some sort of plan. I don't claim to know exactly what it is right now, but I do believe Trump is on our side. I am personally advocating for a much like harsher approach to the info war here. And I've been doing it since day one. And like, if the solution we get whenever we get that is, let's say it's closer to the harsh reality that we've been demanding from the beginning versus just the SAVE Act, like the partial chub that we're getting from Anna Paulina Luna. Like, why not just be going full bore all the time from the beginning? Like, why even put a time constraint on it? You know what I mean? Like, I don't understand red lines having time constraints, because if it's a red line issue, it needs to be solved now. Like, imagine if Trump came out and exposed how fraudulent our elections were on January 21st. Like, could you imagine like where we'd be right now? We might not even have the same makeup of the Senate and Congress as we do. And I feel like we're just giving so many excuses. And that's
but
if we're part of this info war, we need to be pursuing the truth and demanding the truth at all times. Even if we understand why they may not be giving it to us, we should still be demanding that. And if enough of us demanded it, maybe we'd be getting it. Maybe we would have gotten it months ago.
Well, one, I agree we should be demanding it. Two is, if he did that in January, we'd also wouldn't have had lived the experience and gotten the exposure to this mechanism. And I believe fundamentally that is absolutely part of what's happening. That is part of the plan that we're living right now, is the exposure to how this mechanism works for the globalist elite. The part with Anna Paulina Luna, and I agree with you, the SAVE Act is a measure. It is not the end all at all whatsoever. Like, I agree with you completely. But this goes back to, one of the first books that General Flynn and Boone Cutler wrote, and it's people understanding targeted audiences and targeted groups. When information's put out there, people that have the knowledge that you have are going to interpret that message based off of the knowledge you have. But the vast majority of normies, because the vast majority of the American population right now still operates in that normie sphere. Yep. They're still seeing that. To them, that's confirmation that there was an issue with their elections, and hey, this is the direction we got to move in to fix it. This is, kind of bringing them in close enough to where we do get the assists, but not everything that's put out there. I would tell people, go read that first book, targeted audiences, targeted groups, and that'll kind of explain why you see some of the stuff that's out there, because not everything's meant for you. And I mean, it's confusing. I put out a video today explaining to people, a perfect example is the Candace Owens thing, right? You saw a group of
tuning
people
that shit out. That's so dumb.
Yeah, it's dumb, but it's such a perfect example of psychological operations. Because like today, you saw a group of people that, they put all the screenshots of them where they all came out in unison and put demon, 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 right? And so
I didn't see any of that actually.
So, well, it's definitely on my algorithm. And so you have one group that put that out, right? And so then everybody that's in the pro Candace squad says, looks like, the TPUSA Erica Kirk crowd got their script, right? And they did, obviously, right? Like, that's not organic. Listen, I'm not a Candace fan, but I'm not going to say that I'm going to acknowledge that was not organic. And so then they start saying, see, they're paid. There's an operation. But then again, you have that, and now you shift over and you go to that side, the side that, opposed to Candace, which I would consider myself opposed to Candace. And they put a screenshot of all the Candace simps, right? And all their, screenshots. And so you're seeing both these things.
Yeah.
So if you're the normal person, right, the everyday Joe or Jane, you're looking at it and you're like, that's right. That's right. So you're kind of like, well, what the hell is real? And the simplest solution to protecting your mindset and controlling your emotions is just realizing that everything you're seeing is just information. And if you take on personal accountability and research it yourself, you're not going to get psyoped.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're relying on people to tell you what the truth is, and you're relying on people to tell you who the good guys are and the bad guys are, and you're not doing anything independently to verify that, you're still dependent. That's not sovereignty. You're still relying on somebody else.
I agree. I totally agree. I do have another question though, going back to what you said. You said after, like, if the timeline, right? If the midterms happen or whatever, and we don't get the things that we need or whatever, you're going to change your approach, right? How would you change your approach, and what would be the reason for changing it?
So the reason for changing it would be because I would see it as time sensitive. We now have less than 24 months to accomplish the things that we want to accomplish. My approach would be, like right now when I'm critical of Trump, I would say I'm more of a softball critical on it. I'll address the issues, but I'm not very aggressive on how I address the issues. And I'll explain why. Now, my change in behavior would be I would shift to a more aggressive nature. Now, I firmly believe you got to do that very responsibly, and you got to be very conscious of how you go about it, because, this is the reason I don't do that approach right now. There are enough people right now that are trying to attack Trump, trying to subvert him, trying to show, look, the MAGA base is falling apart, Trump's losing supporters, that I do understand that if someone like myself came out, they would take that stuff out of context and use my rhetoric as evidence of the narrative they're trying to push. So right now, I think there's enough people that are, being negative and all that I don't have to go there. I can bring it I can bring the same information, but I could do it in a little more calm and what I feel is an effective way. Versus at that point, can they still take it out of context? Yeah, that risk is still present, but it's a risk I'm willing to take. Again, going to the fact that we're at a window where we're at less than 24 months.
But you change your approach because you see the urgency and necessary to get a job accomplished, right?
Correct.
And so, like, and this is where my approach is a little different. It's like, I wouldn't say I have a softball approach. I definitely don't. But I see the issue, and so I'm going to take the approach that I think accomplishes that goal, regardless of the outcome. And this is why that chart that I put up, the spectrum thing, this is why this week was a good example of this last week with the glyphosate stuff, right? Like, there are weeks where the cheerleaders on the spectrum hate me because what I'm talking about is like, I'm debunking some of the things that they love, right? But it's like, I'm just doing my thing, man. Like, this is the truth. I'm sorry. This is how I see it. This is what I'm doing. And they hate me. And then there's other weeks, like last week, where the cheerleaders love me because the truth that I was pursuing just so happened to be like, it was going against the black pillars and debunking their narratives, And that's what's so weird about the info war right now. It's people are so entrenched in these camps. And if more people had the urgency and the desire for truth. And that's what it's so weird. That's what the truth community, I don't know how we get there. And people get annoyed when you even say this, but how do we get people to demand? Because if enough people right now demanded the truth, do you think the white hats would give it to us? Like if we had enough people, like they know what numbers they need. Like this is the excuse we give, right? Like they have the numbers, maybe it's through AI or whatever. They have the data. They know what the mandate is. If enough people reached a threshold, whatever that is, to demand the truth, do you think they'd give it to us?
No. and here's why. 2 years ago, probably a little bit longer now, about 2 years ago, it was, as a matter of fact, it was a little longer than that. It was the first time I ever got to interview General Flynn one-on-one.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I'm not going to ask the question everybody wants to ask, right? The Q1 is like, you've already asked and answered. You know, I'm not going to put myself in that hole. But one of the questions that I asked him towards the end of the show was, I asked him and I don't remember the exact words I said, but I said, what is the percentage of the court of public opinion that the Trump administration needs in order to execute whatever it is that they need to execute to get it done? It's essentially the question you're asking. Like how far are we from that? And what's the number? And his answer was, we have the number already. And I was like, okay. So then I was just like, if they already feel confident that they control the percentage of the court of public opinion that they need, then why aren't they doing it?
Mm-hmm.
You know? And so what that tells me is there are reasons that I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. But I do know that response is what gives me the answer to yours is no. You know, had he not given me that response, I would have said, yeah, I think if enough of us demand it will. But me getting that answer for him with that specific question made me feel like, okay, there is more to this that I just don't understand yet.
And are you okay with that?
No. You know, listen, this is gonna sound like a hypocrite. If you know, I'm of the mindset, you know, I have two mindsets. You know, when people are like alpha for president, no, listen, I believe, I would say it'd be the Ottoman Empire alphas away. Like we would just start conquering everything. So y'all don't want me as president. We just go around putting our flag everywhere, right?
You'd never get elected in fake elections, bro.
So there's that. But the other thing too is, you know, I'm military. I'm actually of the mindset of, you know, let's let it all burn and let's roll, let's party.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I can defend mine. Yeah. I know my family's going to survive. I know my kids are going to be okay. Let's go. Let's dance. But that's me being honest with my answer. But that's also me knowing that my answer is also very selfish, you know, because I do understand the consequences that come with that, which is why I wouldn't be a general. You know, you do got to know which battles to pick and which strategies, you know, so yeah.
You know, I think some of the reason I ask these type of questions when it comes to like red lines and stuff, and my red line is election exposure, by the way. Like that's been my number one issue I've said for a long time because of the number of things it affects. And I also don't even know if there is such a thing as getting legitimate elections. Like I don't know if that's possible to the extent that you can prove their legitimacy and everything. Like if you haven't read Chris Paul's article, Joe Biden's never president, you need to go do it. Chris's Substack, got to go do it. But that being said, like our elections and the fact that we don't have legitimate representatives representing us anywhere, and guys, that goes for Donald Trump too. I do not think Donald Trump is the legitimate president because of the 2024 election or the 2020 election. I think he got his legitimacy back in 2016. I think that was where he got his mandate, and it has been stolen and subverted along the way, but he's kept it in terms of the number of people that have supported him. And to the extent that legitimacy is given to somebody, like it's not through elections, it's through the will of the people and what they want and what they need, and at least now that's probably the best way they can get it. Whatever data they have on the back end to show that he's the legitimate president, that's all they need. I don't remember where I was going with this.
Well, to that, go ahead. If you got it, go back.
No, I don't. I lost it again.
You know, to that point. So the reason I had chose my words with the court of public opinion when I was asking the general that question is because I've always and there's just my mindset, not saying I'm right, is I truly believe that whoever controls the court of public opinion, I think that's why the deep state has so many operatives on social media out there, because it is a battle for the court of public opinion. Whoever controls the court of public opinion could do whatever they want, including, there's the part people are going to disagree with me on, but I know I'm right on this. even going against the Constitution. If you control the court of public opinion, the power that you have with that allows you to do whatever it is that you need to do. And I think that's why there's such a battle for it. You know, I'm not saying that that's right. I'm not arguing that point. I'm arguing, the actual, like, the battlefield strategy of controlling, the court of public opinion.
Yeah. Okay, I think I kind of remembered why I said this. So the reason I was kind of pushing you on some of this is so many people that, and I know this isn't necessarily your approach, but it's like the full control, the nothing can stop what is coming, all these things. If that were true, then them lying to us is totally unexcusable. Like, the fact that they can't tell us the truth, there should be no excuses for it, because we're also being told that nothing can stop what is coming, right? And that should include us being told the truth. Yet for some reason, that is the one thing that no matter what happens, no matter, it doesn't, there's disinformation is necessary. It's nothing but excuses from everybody. And I've given these excuses too. And this is where my approach to the InfoWar has probably changed over the years from when I first started. Like, you had to walk away to avert the Civil War and all those things. And I believe that, I really do. But to now, it's like, man, we have such little time. And I feel like this is such a unique opportunity to actually get things done. And we're sitting here giving excuses to these people. And it's at all levels. Like, we're giving excuses to Anna Paulina Luna when she's wasting taxpayer dollars doing 60-year-old crime investigations down in Texas. Like, what? Like, what are we doing here, guys? Like, we're literally giving excuses on behalf of illegitimate people who are just burning through our tax dollars and sending it all over the place. But we're not allowed to question that because, that's just doom and, like, just give it time and all these things. Like, no, are we guaranteed to have more Trumps after Trump? Or is it possible that this is our last opportunity? And if this is our last opportunity, we're sitting here on our thumbs, just like fucking around. When we could actually be getting somewhere if there was enough actual pressure. Like, if the mandate mattered, and legitimacy is not given to people because of elections, but it's given because of the mandate, then that means the mandate can probably dictate where this goes. So maybe it's important to, like, dictate where we go instead of forgiving away bad behavior and allowing these people to lie to us constantly, because that's constantly what these people are doing. You can say they're doing it for the right reasons, and you can understand why they might be doing it, but it's still a lie, and you don't have to be okay with it. Even if you understand why they do it, you don't have to be okay with it. You know what I mean?
And that's why I think it's important for, part of the conversation, if you've awakened from the matrix. If you've awakened from the matrix, then your responsibility is exactly what you just explained. If you're someone who's awake, then your responsibility as being awake is to push back against the system. To expose the mechanism, the systems that's doing the wrong things. Trump's going to support you on that. If he's a good guy, he's going to support you on that because you guys have the same mission. With that understanding, though, it's also not everybody has. And so when Anna Paulina is doing what she's doing, again, is that meant for you, or is that meant to get the alignment of other people who see that particular thing? They're we say one issue voter. These are a one conspiracy, theory type person that all of a sudden these people start to follow Anna Paulina because she's touching an issue that is their whole life. Like, this is what they're all about. And in the process of that, now they start to get exposed to other things. That's a very strong likelihood. And I think that's why you have all these different congressmen that are doing all these different things. And I think it really is because they are targeting specific audiences.
Well, okay, Anna Paulina Luna, like the example you just gave, I showed you the post. She's saying that the Save America Act is going to secure our elections for all time, or whatever she said. Yeah, from here on out. Like, I don't think that's a good mindset to have for anybody to have,
It's the first layer of an onion, though. It's enough to get, because you got to remember, there are people that just want to be audience members. They just listen. They're just going to be spectators, and not to put down anybody, but if all you want to be is a spectator, an audience member, you're not what's considered an actionable person. So when we're looking at these targeted audiences, within the targeted audience, you're looking for that targeted group. Who's the targeted group? It's the people that are actionable. These are the people that when they see something and they hear a call to action, they're actually going to do it. You tell them to make phone calls, you tell them to run for the precinct, to go precinct chair, you tell them to do this. Like, these are the people that are going to do it. These are the people that everybody wants to get on their team or on their agenda, because they're the people that are going to make the wheel spin. Everybody else is just noise. And so, I think a lot of these things are to kind of bring those people closer and closer, because listen, if they see that and they're like, oh, follow her, I like that. And then they start to get exposed to the other content, or they get exposed to people that she reposts. And now all of a sudden they're like, hey, this is something I didn't see. But because they trust this person, it puts them in that direction. That is something that happens as well. But again, for the other people like ourselves that know, like, there's no excuse for us. We know what's going on within the apparatus of this government. We know what Doge, exposed. We should be pissed off. Doge exposed this. Why are these things still in play? Like, we should be loud about that, because us being loud about that is, one, it's giving Trump the top cover that he needs. So I'll give it back to you here.
Real quick question. If Doge exposed everything, why do we need JD Vance to wage jihad against fraud?
Well, because we still need that. We still need a war against fraud. It should have been done already. Like, the second Doge exposed it, like, the thing should have been dealt with. We shouldn't be talking about it 13 months later. Like, that is frustrating.
Doge hasn't updated their website since January 1st, and before that it was October. Just saying. Go through every day of my show. I started with no update on the Doge website, because there never is.
I mean, me looking at it hindsight, I think Doge was just for exposure. It was never to bring resolution. Resolution is going to have to come from people like us, demanding this, demanding that. That way Trump actually does something about it, because the court of public opinion is pushing it.
Right there, you're about to make my point. If they're committing fraud with our tax dollars, how do we get them to stop committing fraud with our tax dollars?
We tell Trump. We look for the people.
We tell Trump, no, we stop paying taxes. They can't commit fraud if the taxes aren't there. Sorry.
Well, yes, but
I'm not going to make you say that. But go to your point. I'll stop interrupting.
Well, no, the reason I say we tell Trump is, everybody wants to not pay taxes, right? But everybody's also like, who's going to be the martyrs in this, right? Who's going to get snatched up? And then when those people get snatched up, we'll all defend them. And then when the case law happens and Trump finally removes it, then we'll all do it. Well, the faster way to do that is to demand Trump deal with it, to demand and be so loud that Trump can't ignore it. If he does rallies, he shows up to a venue and we're talking about, hey, fraud, we're hammering that point. Then at some point, he's going to have to deal with the issue. Now, granted, it's still going to be done on the way, because I firmly believe that there's a window for all this and they understand it. But how they prioritize it, we can have an impact on that, But the top cover part, I was going to say, when we look at the administration, Cash has top cover from Pam Bondi. Pam Bondi has top cover from President Trump. And that's usually people stop right there. But the most important top cover is the top cover that the president has. And that's the people. If the people are demanding something in unison at such a large, like a majority, where it's just, you can't ignore it, then Trump has the top cover to do the things he already has planned. And taxes is a perfect example. If enough of us are out there and we're being loud about it, we're posting about it, doing podcasts about it, like, if everybody's pushing it, at some point you force even, corrupt Susie Wallace to be like, listen, like, we got to do something here. All right, boss, like, you got to go make these people happy. Because we gave him top cover. Because if he goes and does it because he's just like, hey, we're going to get rid of taxes, then he's going to be at war with Congress. But if he's to the point where it's like, look, Congress, people are going to break down the door of the White House if we don't get rid of taxes, like, this is going to happen. Well, he's got top cover. The most important top cover that exists is the top cover for the president, and that's us.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with you. And I think that's why we try to push the narratives a lot here, man. This has been a fun conversation. It's getting a little late, though. Do you want to stick around for rants?
Yeah, I'm good with the rants.
All right.
Let's see how many people bashed you.
Oh man, it was relentless. But I low key love it when people hate on me, because it's like I know I'm over the target. It's when the right people are hating on me and think I'm the worst. But it is what it is. I think somebody has to do it. Like, I feel like I take all the slings and arrows for the people who aren't willing to say the things people should be saying, and that, in my opinion, people should be saying. I wish more people would play devil's advocate, even though I watch your guys' show now and then, not always, like Tuesday nights, I try to get some shit done. But I agree with a lot of the things you guys say. I disagree with some of it. We love the friction here at Badlands. Like, that's like part of our ethos is friction. We're all friends. We all love each other, but we get into it. Like, our private chat is mostly debates and mostly name calling and mostly just shit talk. But it's great because that allows us to like refine our talking points and our thought processes. And I feel like we make progress through things. And I think stuff like this is good. Like, challenging each other is the only way we move forward. Even though some of the things I challenged you on, like, I agreed with what you said, but I was like, in my head, how I got to understand why I agree with that, it's because I challenged myself in my own thought process. And so when I see other people putting the talking point forth, I'll challenge them the same way I challenge myself. It's the only way that we can move forward. And I still have more questions. I could challenge you more. We should do this again soon because I feel like we could go a lot further with this conversation. I feel like we scratched the surface barely. So we should do this again soon. Maybe Bernie Bright's power will be off next week too. We could only hope. Real quick, let's get a soft disclosure ad in, and then we'll get through the boosts and the rants. So this is Patriot's mom, everybody.
In a quiet town at where beards grow wild and lips dare to crack without permission, one woman has suffered.
Hi, I'm Margie, and I'm Patriot's mother.
But the world would come to know her by another name, Madame Margie, the moistureless.
Past 6 months, I have been suffering with dry, chapped lips.
Dry, chapped, and unstoppable.
I have tried every lip balm on the market.
Nothing could save her until
Jay came home with a lip balm. It's called Soft Disclosure, and it's all natural.
With one miraculous application, her power awakened.
Within 1 day, my lips were healed. It was miraculous.
But salvation came at a cost. For in the shadowed lands known only as Badlands,
you boys at Badlands are so handsome.
she saw potential.
You're covering up your beautiful faces.
And she made her demand.
You should shave them all off.
Or face the consequences. Beard oil will not save you now.
And you'll look so much better.
This summer, moisturize wisely and guard your beards. Because Madame Margie, the moistureless, is always watching.
All right. Get yourself some soft. I just ripped the label off on accident when I was talking, but get yourself some soft disclosure. Lip balm. It's awesome. All right. Let's do the boost real quick. People seem to like you being on, man.
They'll get tired of me.
No, they get tired of me. Yet they keep coming back for their lashings. So who's the real dumb one? It's not me, guys. It's you. You keep coming back for more. 1027 JS for $20 says, hello, guys. Hello, Joe. She's from North Dakota. She gives like every episode. She's awesome. A fellow North Dakota. Thank you, Joe. Carrying this Fire 7 for $10 says, love Devolution and never missed one. Got a new t-shirt idea for us. Badlands Media on the front and on the back. Bring back peasants and pitchforks or some variation of it. Thanks for what you do. I like that. I like that a lot. I think that's all we got for Wednesday on the boosts. Let's check out the rants. 12 Indie Boy, good to see you, Ty. He says, prayers for the Brights. Just happy to stay up and watch live for a little while and possibly the best Wednesday DPH ever. LOL. See you both at GART. This probably was the best Wednesday episode I've ever had with somebody. I think I agree. Jen Hud for $5. Time brings truth. Example, isn't it true we are finding truths regarding Nixon? He was not the horrific POTUS we believed, but he was being handled by a deep state. Could that be happening now with Donald J. Trump? Great show. A lot of people pushing that narrative. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but I think Trump feigns like he's not in control, but I think he's in more control than people understand. But the fact that people are talking about him being controlled by like Israel, for example, people weren't talking about Israel and their pervasive grasp on our politics prior to Trump. And it's not by accident that they are now. I think it's intentional.
I think he distanced himself from the things that he's most involved with.
I like that. Miss Truth Seeker 1776, love seeing Alpha on DPH. Thank you to Badlands for all you do to bring us real news. Love and blessings. Thank you. 2812 VPJ, Trump has seen the end of this movie, just has to play out for the rest of us. Nobody can explain Trump's confidence. I like that too. Daddy Do 17, the plan is, which is the best way to take down these evil bastards without costing people's lives, period. But how do we know if it's the best way if we don't even know what the plan is? We're speculating about what the plan is. That's the hard part for me. Like, we don't know what the plan is, so you can't tell me that's the best approach when you don't know what it is. You know what I mean?
I think the closest realistic concept to that is something that actually Bongino said. And I know a lot of people don't like Bongino, but one of the things he said on a show a few weeks ago, it might have even been his returning show or the one after. He says, when you get to the level that he was as deputy director, or even with Cash as, the director of the FBI, there's so much leadership below you that's already filtered through the choices and decisions to be made, that if it's a decision that's landing on your desk, it's a shit decision. Like you're choosing between bad and worse. So he goes, so if that's what we're getting at our level, then what do you think is making its way to the desk of the president? And we're at a war, and there is going to be casualties. We don't like that idea, but wars aren't pretty.
Yeah, that's true. It's very true. Rave Daddy 523, I love you, John, but if you're going to play the devil's advocate, then why is all your show's intro ending with Trump calling out your Badlands media? That's a hell of a name, so you can't question comms. I've openly said, like, I don't think he was actually talking about Badlands, but you'd be stupid to think I wouldn't use that in every one of our videos all the time. Like, he's in the Badlands and he says Badlands. Like, of course I'm going to use that. Come on, Rave Daddy. I didn't become a marketing genius because I'm stupid. Of course I'm going to use that. I never said that was comms, though. Although, if you guys want to pretend it is, go for it. Rave Daddy 523, I want to make it clear I'm not questioning you, John. Playing devil's advocate just like you. We think alike. Midterms are going to expose the left stealing, then come arrests, in my opinion. And yeah, I think playing devil's advocate is the right approach for everybody. And you should be questioning me. We'll question each other. It's great. But also, the midterms are going to expose the left stealing. That is the excuse we've used since 2020. We've used it 2020, 2022, 2024. We're about to use it again. Just throwing it out there. At some point, are we going to stop excusing the behavior and just be like, hey, you've exposed the left stealing enough now. Let's see it. And I think that's one of the rugs I'm on. Alpha is the election exposure rug. I'm thinking he got that report from Tulsi by now that John Solomon said he was getting. That rug and the Rico Grande rug. Those are the two rugs I'm partially on.
To the devil's advocate. So a couple of years ago, spaces were still fairly new. They were less than a year old. I had met a group of friends, and these are hardcore Q guys. Like, they're good people, man. Solid people. We're still friends, but they're hardcore Q people. And they didn't really know my position yet. And so we said, let's have a debate. And they're like, yeah, we'll do a Q debate. We got to find some people that are opposed to it. I said, I'm opposed to it. They were like, so I was actually on the anti-Q team on the debate.
Wow.
And I was hammering these guys. And at the end of the debate is when I let the cat out of the bag. People were kind of, listen, people, the way people get people were pissed. And I said the point of it was I wanted to expose, the areas where we're weak in the understanding of it. Because now you guys know, like, hey, you can be hit on this. Now you have a choice. You could be sensitive, or you can go back and study that and make sure that if that question is ever presented to you again, you know how to address it. You know how to understand it. So yeah. I think devil's advocate makes us grow.
I agree. You do seem taller tonight, Alpha, I will say.
It's the chair.
Jen Hud, Alpha, do you think MTG and Donald J. Trump are faking their feud? I'm in Georgia. I think, could she be in wings to enter Georgia when all fraud comes out? She being used to bring mainstream media and normies in fold. Step in a gov candidate.
So listen, I'm one of the Badlands people, probably the only one. I do not like MTG. I don't think it's, Kafabi. And reason being, if you go through my social media, there were red flags and stuff that I saw a very long time ago that I started to call out. Before this feud that happened between them, I had issues with her and Matt Gaetz, and Matt Gaetz was because of actual one-on-one conversation that I got to have with them where I didn't like the answers that were provided. I still have that recording if he ever tries to deny it.
Matt Gaetz?
Mm-hmm.
I had a one-on-one. Well, not one-on-one, but I had interaction with Matt Gaetz when I went down to Kansas, and I wasn't a big fan of his very normie answers. A lot of the stuff he said.
No, if I told you guys, you guys be all pissed off. Listen, I will say I like what he's been doing as a podcaster, but during his role in the government, I was absolutely disappointed, and he said some things that I felt were just terrible.
Yeah, MTG, I don't know, and I don't really. It's not one of those things like if it ends up she's been, on Trump's side the whole time and like just it was kayfabe or whatever, like that's cool, but also. Like that means she's just lying to us right now. She did have that post the other day where she was like, people within the admin, they post Q stuff because they know that everybody's going to eat it up. Did you see that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on that? Because I guarantee there are people that do that.
I think the people in the admin that know what they're doing aren't doing that. I think other people are doing that. I think the ones that understand the significance of it are not going to risk just doing it just so people can eat it up. I don't think they'll do that. I think they understand how important it is, but I think there are people that exist in government that do exploit it.
Yeah.
I don't think it's like people. I don't think it's people like Scavino or Miller. I don't think those guys are, but I think there are people in government that do that.
Fair. Rave Daddy 53, John, you don't need to read all the Q drops. I haven't read them all, but I read enough to know from 2018. If Q comes back, we all need to read the drops moving forward from now, in my opinion. Yeah, I mean, if new Q drops came in, it'd be hard to kind of miss. Like everybody be posting them, like being actively engaged. It'd be hard not to read them as they come out. I don't know. If Q is what a lot of people think it is, like people with access to all sorts of information, probably reading our chats, watching our shows and stuff. Just based on that, I doubt they'll ever post again because of some of the state of some of the Q movement. Like, so there are some people out there who think that they're literally going to get like presidential medals of freedom because of their decodes. Like, I'm not shitting you. That's what these people think. And I think for that reason alone, Q cannot come back again. Go ahead.
Look at everybody mad at me. This is just my opinion, folks. I used to plan operations, and if the Q operation and my assessment of it is correct, we'll never get the full disclosure of Q. We'll get a limited scope, enough, to give people, the vindication of thing that they need, so people aren't, they're not going to sacrifice an entire community, be left thinking see, you guys were retards, we told you. There'll be enough disclose to make that not be the case, but it's an operation. You would never fully disclose an operation because what's to say 100 years from now, 200 years from now, you're not in this boat where you got to deploy an operation like this again. I don't think we will ever get the full revelation of Q.
Yeah. And plus also, like, what would the point of the drops coming back again? Like,
to that part, I do see a lot of people say, well, when Q comes back. If you do subscribe to Q and the interpretation of a lot of these drops, they have been dropping comms on X. If you go and you look at the interpretation of some of these posts and the timestamps, there is. It's again, and I would say go watch DeathCon if you guys haven't. It's the understanding of why is this connection being made and what direction is it pushing you to look for something so you have an understanding of what's coming or how to interpret it. But now as far as the Q&A, everybody wants to know if we're gonna have that one more Q&A. I hope so. I don't know. I hope so.
Is that was that a thing that they said they were going to do?
They did, but again, was that part of the disinformation to keep the deep state on their heels in anticipation? We don't know.
Interesting. Rave Daddy, I already read that one. The Boom Diggity, $100. Thank you, Boom. It's very awfully generous of you. More are understanding, young and old, even normies hardly paying attention. I see many in real life who now understand fraud, history, NGOs, abuse, etc. We all must be shown the many layers to the shit show. Yeah, and I agree. I think they know more now and they understand more now than they did before. I don't think the normies who aren't in this every day, and whenever I talk about the normies, I kind of think of my golf buddies. You know, we text now and then. They're not in this like I am, but they'll be like, "Oh man, that was a sweet State of the Union. Do you see the Democrats? How did they not stand up for whatever?" Those guys aren't balls deep, but they're like, "Yeah, there's a lot of fraud." Like, "Oh yeah, that sucks." Top level stuff. So yeah, I would agree that more people are awake now, but I don't think people are going to wake up to the level that some people think they are. It's just not happening, no matter what comes out. Brave Daddy 523. I've been here since 2018 watching Red Pill 78, Brad and Jordan before YouTube took it all away. Then they came back on your Badlands channel. I will see y'all in Nashville. GART, love y'all. Yeah, guys, get your GART tickets. Badlandsmedia.tv/events. You can see discussions like this happening on stage and off stage at the event. Events are awesome. You guys got to come to one if you haven't before. Plus virtual tickets.
You'll have these discussions with us after event, whether it's around a campfire, at the bar with beers, like the conversation me and Jon had. Every GART I've been to, I've had conversations like this with people that go, and it's awesome.
It's amazing. And you make lifelong friends. It's the family you didn't even know you had. They're waiting for you at the next GART. You got to make it. Julie J.N., they had numbers as soon as he was announced as the winner, but it wasn't the right time for them. Trust the plan for me means they have to get everything lined up right so that the system doesn't collapse. For another $5. Thank you, Julie. They aren't able to control what the Black Hats do, so it's like they keep having their alignment getting whacked. They will eventually get their end game, but they do need to hurry. Yeah, this is an analogy I used a couple Wednesday powers ago when we were talking about like the 5D chess, and like the end is guaranteed just based on the number of moves, but how long will it take to get there, right? How long will it take to corner the deep state? And my like twist to that was, well, let's pretend it's a 5D game of chess, white hats versus black hats. The black hats are cornered, but we are the ones that are the chess pieces, but we can control whether or not we do what the people controlling us want us to do. And a lot of times we don't necessarily work in agreement with the way that we're being moved. James Klain, $10. You guys are great. Thank you, James Klain. Appreciate you. Rave Daddy 53. Alpha's right. Most people are spectators. I was that person for 8 years, but I'm a Gemini, and 2026 is the year I flip and become active. That's why I'm coming to GART and other stuff. Awesome. Love to hear that. And by the way, guys, you don't have to come to GART to get active. It's a great way to start. But you can also go to badlandsmedia.tv/groups, and you will likely find that there is a local Badlander group in your area already started, already doing meetings, already doing like Zooms or meetups. It's getting together with like-minded people in your community. You don't all have to agree on everything. Some people hate me. Some people don't. Some people tried to destroy my business. They still go to these meetings. Like it's just a great way to get involved. And I'd highly encourage you to sign up and get out of your comfort zone. Get out of your shell, out of your comfort zone, and go to one of those.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a snail, hermit crab.
Yeah, whatever. We probably have a few of those at Wash. Julie J.N., I don't think it has anything to do with waking up the normies because they don't care. So frustrated with my friends that don't care. I don't know how my retard TDS friends are ever going to see it. They probably won't.
So I wrote an article. A lot of people calling it a book. I worked on it for a long time. And when I wrote this article on Trust the Plan, it's titled "What is the Plan?" It's the one I was telling you about earlier, that 17 phases. But I wrote it for two audiences at the same time. I wrote it for the person that subscribes to Q, but I also wrote it for the critic. So I would tell people it's free. If you guys want to invest the time, it's like 22,000 words. But if you want to read that, it's got videos. Listen, I made it. I mean, I thought of Marines, right? Big margins on the end to put notes and videos because I need videos or I'll get bored. It's great. Like I said, it's the last article that I wrote on my Substack. If you guys want to peep it out.
What's your Substack?
alphawarrior.substack.com.
Nice. Check it out, guys. Smay 60s. Good to see you, Smay. He called in on Monday for the Baseless Conspiracies. The plan is working. We are becoming mature. Maturity in life is to get over yourself. Then you can help others. I like that. I do like that. DCNR 226 for $50. Very generous. Having my dog Alpha on warrants this. Furthermore, who deals with snow anymore? Move to Florida. Maybe you like paying property taxes. Yeah, I'm kind of stuck here in North Dakota, but Florida's not all it's cracked up to be. I've been down there. But yeah,
listen, I love Florida. It's just there's no mountains.
Yeah, isn't it like the flattest state?
Is it?
I'm pretty sure Florida's the flattest state. Somebody fact check me on that.
I thought it was beautiful. It's just I know I would miss mountains. I think that's my reservation.
Yeah, Florida is generally considered the flattest state in the United States. You guys should come to Deadwood, guys. If you haven't been, talk about scenery. There's not mountains necessarily, but big hills. Do you live on near mountains?
Yeah, I'm look right out my window.
What the hell?
Got the tramway, Big Bear, Mount San Jacinto. Yeah, where I'm literally, it's probably some massive volcano ground. Something like that.
Team Smooth, keep up the friction. Thanks for challenging perceptions. Thank you, Team Smooth. Rave Daddy 53, Tim Burchett lives across the street from my subdivision, and I've met him many times. This year, I plan to go to his stuff, and if I get to talk to him, my number one question is, please talk to Jon at Badlands. Yeah, I have multiple people now trying to angle me an interview with Tim Burchett, so help. If you know him, if you live across the subdivision from him, go get him on. Tell him I'm trying to get a hold of him. I've sent him DMs. I have people calling his congressional office. All I want is one interview.
Dude, yes, me and Josh can hook you up. He's going to come on to do the show with us.
I know, Josh. I've been texting Josh, too. He's one of the people I have working on this. And it hasn't panned out yet, so I'm going to keep pushing until it works out. I'm not just going to trust the Josh that he's going to pull it off for me. I'm going to get it done myself.
You got to ask him the taxes question.
Oh, I'm 100% going to. And I have a great post of his that he posted a while ago. That's if somebody who said this as a congressman would be 100% supportive of a tax revolt and is just waiting and primed for the tax question. But nobody's going to, Benny Johnson doesn't fucking ask him that question. Ridiculous. Kira F says the plan is good versus evil. God wins. That's the plan. At the end of the day, absolutely.
Yeah, you ain't wrong.
Ain't wrong. The AK Tard Farmer says, love both you yards. I think he meant tards probably.
Yeah, I think so.
And I'll take it. Team Smooth for $1. John, I'll sit next to the rugs and tickle the edges, but otherwise I kick them out of the way. That is the right approach. But yeah. Mighty Brush 68 for $10. 10 years ago, I was Go Kinetic on local talk radio. Badlands made me think differently, but I wonder if dismantling something this evil and huge is possible without a seismic event. Not advocating. Yeah, I'm not, whenever I say burn the whole system down, I'm not advocating for gun on the streets, violence, or any of that. I'm saying rip the Band-Aid off. We're supposedly waiting for all this exposure and all these things, and we're justifying the time it takes to do it. Just rip the Band-Aid off. Let's see how we respond when some of this bullshit is exposed.
Better have your freedom seeds.
I got plenty of freedom seeds. Rave Daddy 523 for $5. Move to Tennessee. We have mountains and snow from time to time. It's a great place to live. I'll consider that when I'm down there.
Tennessee was one of the ones on my list, but after seeing what my buddy, Sean dealt with the TBI and stuff out there, Tennessee is like a little undercover California when it comes to politics. Tennessee needs to get some. Sean Taylor.
I don't know who that is.
Yeah, a solid dude. He's been doing some good work. Media Matters came after him recently. NC5 News came after him. TBI came after him. He was one of the. I'll tell you afterwards.
All right. Well, yeah, we are at that point now. So I think we wrap it up. I don't have an outro video ready, so let me see if I can find something quick. Unless you know of any really good outro videos.
I mean, that 17-second one earlier was good.
Yeah, but I feel like we can do better than that. No, we'll do. Let's do an old election fraud video. I like to play this from time to time. It's a good one to end on. Let me just get down to it. Here we go. All right, we're gonna end with this one, everybody. Hit that thumbs up if you enjoyed the show. I'll be back on tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern on the Daily Herald. When are you back?
I am back tomorrow morning with CanCon. He's probably going to wake me up half an hour early. And I just want to remind everybody before you do the video, just because this doesn't get shared enough, and this is absolutely important. And I want to make sure you guys all constantly remind Badlands about this. I am the official first Badlands fantasy football champion. Okay. They haven't given me a trophy yet, folks. I'm very disappointed right now. I think you guys should all pressure Jon to come up with a really awesome fantasy football trophy, and that they should be awarded to me because I am the Badlands fantasy football champion.
Well, the reason I haven't given you a trophy yet is I have this plan I'm working on. I can't tell you what it is, but it's coming, and nothing can stop the trophy from coming. But I'm not going to tell you when it's coming or how it's coming or why it's coming or any details at all. But someday it'll come, and no amount of demanding it will give it to you, Alpha.
Show Jon that pressure works the way he's demanding against Trump.
Oh yeah, hell yeah! I'm in support of that. Okay, thanks everybody. Hit the thumbs up. We'll see you tomorrow.
What I've seen is so bad. She should not be allowed to run. And just in that respect, I say it's rigged.
People are discovering that the system is all rigged, that the voting is just pacification for the voters, and it really doesn't count.
You can run the best campaign. You can even become the nominee. And you can have the election stolen from you. What the Democratic National Committee did meant this election was rigged. Yeah, I think it was.
Brazil describes how Clinton engineered a, quote, secret takeover of the Democratic National Committee.
We recognize the process was rigged.
1.8 million dead people are registered to vote, and some of them are voting.
Evidence of election fraud mounts as the mainstream media and Democrats loudly insist Joe Biden is still the 2020 winner.
Mail-in voting is fraud.
All of this now has casted what is real significant doubt on the integrity of the 2020 election.
I believe the alleged irregularities can be organized into three basic categories. Number one, lax enforcement or violations of election laws and controls.
I witnessed the room erupt in thunderous applause and derogatory cheering as Republican poll workers were picked off one by one and ejected from the room repeatedly by police escort throughout the day.
Oh, Trump. Fuck Trump.
2, allegations of fraudulent votes and ballot stuffing.
What's all these? Are these mail-in ballots or what's these coming in?
What are these? These are my on tape here.
What's that?
Am I on tape as well?
And 3, corruption of voting machines and software that might be programmed to add or switch votes.
The county clerk came forward and said tabulating software glitched and caused a miscalculation of the votes.
Public has only a small idea of the kind of evidence that we have.
This allowed fraud and abuse to occur on a scale never seen before, using the pandemic as a pretext.
The Department of Homeland Security says the 2020 election was the most secure in American history.
The most secure
The
in
most
American
secure
history.
in history.
The most
in American
secure
history.
in
Most
U.S.
secure
election.
election.
Secure
U.S.
in
history. It was the most secure election
in American history.
If we are right about the fraud, Joe Biden can't be president.